keep hearing about how biological men have no strength advantage over women in 2019. So watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S. I identified as a woman whilst lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot. It's the curse of femininity.
No, I think you're totally right. And it's weird because it's not a curse.
In its proper context, it's not.
No, exactly.
It's like the equivalent of like male aggressiveness and competition. When it's in its proper context and it's being used in its virtuous God-given role, it's not just good, it's absolutely necessary for a society, a culture, and a nation to survive. And if you don't believe me, then wait until there's any type of emergency. I think the vax rate in Africa is under 10%. Where are all the bodies? They breeze through the whole thing. No,
wow.
Barely any lockdowns.
Just
poorest continent in the world.
Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast today, and I am so excited to be sitting down with Zuby all the way from Dubai, which is actually crazy. We were just saying before we hit record that the magic of the internet never ceases to blow my mind. I feel like we're right at that age range where like we're not quite native to the internet, but it's not like, we're not in like the boomer generation. I don't know. I just see it as so miraculous, and I'm so happy that you're here talking to me, but welcome, Zuby. Hello.
Hello, Nikki. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I said this to you also before we hit record, that you're someone that I have kind of just been watching from the sidelines for the last few years now. I was actually watching, I must have known this because like I said, I've had my eye on you, though that sounds creepy, for years, but I don't know that I remembered that you were on the Joe Rogan podcast. And so in the last day or two, I've kind of been watching part of that interview back. And it reminded me something that I said to you at the beginning, which is just that you are a fascinating person to me because you're very measured, I feel like, with your words. You're very thoughtful in the way that you speak about things. You said in the interview with Joe, like, you don't like to give public predictions about things, though you kind of accidentally did. I don't know if you remember this, but you made a comment about like Tulsi. Like, I think Tulsi needs to come over to the Republican Party.
That was in 2019.
Yes, I saw that. I was like, wow, look at him go.
Yeah, because I've been on Rogan twice. I did another one in 2021, and actually we're long overdue for another one. So next time I'm in the States, I'm sure we'll probably make that happen.
That's cool. Yeah, it did make me giggle though, that you were like, I don't like to make predictions, which like I said, you're very measured. But then when you said that, I'm like, he was totally right. And I can't remember because I wasn't like taking notes, but there were a couple things that you said that I was like, okay, that's pretty spot on. And that really leads me to, like I said, one of the main reasons I wanted to interview you. I think you have a really interesting cultural background. Your upbringing is fascinating. I don't know many people that spent, a large chunk of their life in Saudi Arabia that's like essentially a Westerner. And so I'm really just excited to talk to you about your perspective on the crazy things that are going on in the world. And I know I just intro with that, but I actually want to start with the reason that I found you, which is why I think a lot of people found you. If you don't know this about Zuby, I was going to call it a stunt, but I don't know if we could call it a stunt. He participated in something. What year was this that you did the weightlifting thing?
February 2019.
February 2019. Okay, so about a year before the world had a meltdown. It was kind of like a very pivotal time. So basically what Zuby did, and you can interrupt me at any point, and I'm probably going to like slowly shuffle this over to you, but Zuby participated in a weightlifting competition and he enrolled as a woman. And the reason why I found that fascinating, I mean, I know everybody found it fascinating, like blew up the internet, but it was because it was like making a statement without making a statement. It was so glaringly obvious. That's what you put in front of everyone. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't even train for that, right? Like I know you train in general, but you weren't like training for the competition.
Yeah, I mean, my lift that went viral wasn't heavy given my capabilities. I could lift 100 at the time. I could lift 100 pounds more than the video that went viral. So, but that was part of the point because I just walk up to it with ease and pick it up and walk away. And I think it was the caption that did it. I could have posted that video in another context, and it wouldn't have had much of a response. But due to the caption and the fact that I said that I was identifying as a woman while I was lifting the weight. I mean, if you rewind back to where the world was 6 years ago, and you think of the conversations that were going on then compared to how those conversations are taking place now, and how many people are aware of this particular issue, stuff has changed a lot. I mean, in the past half decade, things have changed actually a huge amount. Even if we go back to 2020 or 2021 or 2022, and we look at what
Mm,
the overall sociocultural and political climate was then, not just in the USA, but I'd say across the entire Western world, it was very different. There was much more of a stranglehold and a vice grip going on in a certain direction. And
hmm
the pendulum has started to swing back the other way. And I think we need to be cautious it doesn't swing too hard in the other direction. But
hmm
I think it's coming back much more towards a position of common sense. And, my point, it's kind of fascinating because that post and a lot of things that I say and I do, people interpret through different lenses. So,
mm,
for example, some people make a reference to me doing that deadlift and having that post going viral, and they take it as a political statement. And I think it's quite fascinating that we have been living in a world, we've been living in a culture and a climate for the past 10 years where, firstly, the concept of man and woman, male and female itself becomes supposedly up for debate.
mm.
And people are quite literally saying that, oh, hey, what I did should be valid because, well, a woman's anyone who identifies as a woman. So lo and
hmm
behold, I
hmm
chose to identify as a woman.
Yeah,
Didn't trim my beard or anything. So
yeah.
it's kind of strange that that happened to begin with, which is obviously the point that I was highlighting about the absurdity and the unfairness of it all.
Yeah.
But furthermore, the fact that doing something like that is viewed as a political statement. I didn't express any political opinions in that video, right? It's not something that
hmm
in any sort of sane society would be considered a political issue. We're not talking about immigration or taxes
Mm.
or laws or anything like that, right? It's just where this is just common sense, and this is just something that is poking fun at something that is humorous. But some people view it with a very political lens. Some people view it this way. Some people view it that way. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride over the last few years.
So I don't know what you said the caption on the post is why you think it went viral. What
Yeah,
did the
yeah, yeah,
caption
yeah.
say? Ish.
Okay, so let me give the full context. I will
Okay.
clarify one thing. I didn't actually enter a competition. So
Oh, okay.
the lift wasn't in a sanctioned meet. It was just from one of my training sessions in the gym.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it was a video of me doing a 230 kilo deadlift, which is I think around 510 pounds off the
Oof.
top of my head. And I just wrote the caption at the time on Twitter. It was called Twitter at the time.
Yeah.
On February 26, 2019, I remember exactly. Um, I was I wrote a post with that video, a 9-second video, and it just said, I keep hearing about how biological men have no strength advantage over women in 2019. So watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S. I identified as a woman whilst lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot. So I just put that out there to my
Yeah.
19,000 followers at the time. I thought it was going to get a couple laughs, maybe a couple of likes and shares.
Yeah.
And it went on to accumulate millions upon millions of videos. It went viral, not just on Twitter, but on other social media platforms. It got news coverage. It was spoken about on many of the biggest podcasts in the world.
Mm.
And at the time I posted it, I was just an independent rapper from England. I didn't even have much of
Wow.
a US audience or anything like that at the time. Anyone who knew
Wow.
me just knew me as a rapper from the UK who'd been doing my thing in that regard for the past decade.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, boom, Joe Rogan is talking about it. Tucker Carlson is talking about it on Fox News. It's being covered in Australia, BBC in the UK, Sky News, the Sunday Times are writing articles about it. Just, it went bonkers. It went
Yeah.
bonkers. Yeah.
And then like a game of telephone, suddenly it's that you've entered a weightlifting competition in my in my mind. You entered a competition. No, but that it still speaks to the point, like the reason why it blew up in the first place. The fact that you were able to just say, okay, I'm identifying as a woman now, and you boom, lift 100 pounds more than the record breaker. I mean, it's truly incredible. So it happened really fast for you. You were not setting yourself up for this. You did not expect it. It just blew up.
No. So, I mean, success has happened very slow. I mean, I've
Mm,
been putting stuff out to the public for a very long time in the same way you have. I mean, musically, I put out my first album in 2006 when I was still in university. I went
wow.
full time with my music in 2011. So I've been self employed for over 13 years now. But
Mm,
it wasn't until, we're talking about 2019 here. So that's 13 years into me making music and 8 years into me being a full time artist that video went viral. And then off the back of that, it led to a huge amount of opportunities, which I was able to take advantage of because I've been building up my skills in various regards over the
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
And I found myself in a certain position, and it's kind of crazy because now we're more than 6 years past that moment.
Yeah, and it's still being
So
talked
it
about. And I'm like,
wasn't.
can I talk to you about your weightlifting thing?
No,
Yeah.
it's totally fine. I mean, it's cool that there's so many people who have discovered me since then who
Mm.
aren't even aware that I was the person who did that, or like they never came across it to begin with. There's people who remember me from that, but I'm grateful that I have such an audience now where, like, whenever I meet people in public who know me, recognize me, whether it's in UK, Dubai, USA, wherever, any country, like it happens in every country now.
Mm.
I always ask, like, how did you come across my stuff? And it's such a range. It's such a range of answers now, which is
Because you do
fascinating,
so many
So
different things.
I do a lot of things. For some people, it's, oh, it's the OG through the music.
Yeah.
For some people, it's, oh, I heard you on Rogan. Oh, I heard you on Ben Shapiro. I heard you on this podcast, on that podcast. I came across one of your videos on YouTube. I liked the stuff you were putting out during the whole pandemic time. And, you helped me to stay sane. I was following all your tweets
Mm.
and your Instagram posts. Like hundreds of millions of people discovered me between 2020 and 2022 because I was one of the few people with
Wow.
a significant following who was very, very vocally against the lockdowns and against the man from the
Mm.
beginning, like from February, March 2020, when they started announcing it and they started shutting stuff down, like back when people were terrified and no one wanted to speak up and everyone was afraid of getting canceled. I was just there from like early, just like, this is not what people
Insanity.
are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
insane. And I got huge amounts of backlash, but huge amounts of love
oh,
as well.
I can only imagine. I was going to say, not to, I mean, people are allowed to, I mean, it's great when people change and, they transform and their opinions shift. That's totally fine, welcome, amazing. But it also kind of struck me when I was watching your Rogan interview. I thought, man, a lot of these like perspectives that he's sharing are still seem to be like you're just very consistent. They still seem to be a lot of the perspectives you share now. So that's also very interesting that you were anti-lockdown from the beginning, because once again, I'm just grateful for people who came around, but there were a lot of people that were not, or it took them a while to really register what was going on a global
Yeah,
scale.
they still haven't for the most part. So it's
Yeah.
it's fine. Even that one is a few years behind us at this stage. And look, I hope most people have learned some type of lesson from that, even if it's on how to treat fellow human beings and how not to.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to get a full reconciliation
Yeah.
on that one.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
people talk about that in different news articles. I'm like, I don't think that's really going to happen because I think they felt like they had a reason. I think
yeah.
some people are still really scared about what's going on now. Like they're linking, the measles outbreaks, things that are happening with all of that. It's kind of in the same wave of thought, I feel. So I want to tell you about my absolute favorite chips, specifically because I love nachos. Nachos is like a meal in our rotation every single week, anywhere from like 1 or 2 times a week, I'd say, we have nachos. Now, we don't just have any nachos, we have nachos using masa chips. If you've never heard of masa chips, they are amazing because they are just very simple, organic ingredients. It's literally organic, non-GMO corn. They fry their chips in beef tallow, which is amazing. And then they use sea salt and actually natural flavors, like from the plants and the flavors that they're doing. So like their lime chips is actually lime. Their habanero pepper is using habanero peppers, if that's how you say it. They're incredible. Not only do they taste great, but like I said, for nachos and dipping, they're the best because they never get soggy. They never sag down. So I also use those chips in chili, and I love that too because same thing, when I crumble them on the chili, they don't get soggy, they don't get soft. They stay nice and crunchy in the chili for like a long period of time because they are just so sturdy and delicious. So if you want to try out masa chips, you can use my code Nikki Philippi and you will get 20% off of your first purchase. Once again, it's just my name, Nikki Philippi, and happy nacho making. Oh, that's right. I was going to ask you, this might be random. I'm feeling kind of lame because I actually have not heard any of your music. So the way that I know you and the way that I have followed and appreciated you is really like as a thought leader. Like your tweets on X, I guess we call it. Yeah, you're really, like I said, you're very concise, you're very consistent. I find that you point out thoughts that I'm like, oh man, that's a really good thought. I hadn't thought about that. So I haven't listened to your music. But I have a hunch. Do you or have you produced your own music? Are you a producer? Are you involved in that element? Or do you work with a
I
team?
don't, yeah, I don't make beats,
Okay.
but I write all my lyrics, and obviously I'm a rapper.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how to make beats. I've never bothered to learn, and I'm not that curious to learn because I know so many good producers,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
let them do what they're good at. But
You're
yeah, when it comes to the words, when it comes to performance, that's all me.
yeah. Are you on a label? Do you self-produce? Are you kind of like hustling and getting people to help you put together your albums? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I've been 100% independent from the beginning.
Okay, that's what
Yeah.
I figured because you've really got that like creative hustler, make stuff happen
Oh
vibe.
yeah.
So that's what I was wondering that like that oozes out of you. Okay, so something something I wanted to circle back on in regards to the weightlifting thing. You made a comment about the pendulum swinging the other way. And I'm
Mm,
curious as to what your thoughts are about this because I've been having this conversation with my mom, both my parents lately. Everything that's going on with President Trump being back in office and all of the like rapid fire executive orders that he's making. A lot of the stuff that he's doing, not all of it, but a chunk of it I would categorize as like, my side, like, okay, yeah, that's kind of something that I wanted, like my team. But something that's been freaking me out a little bit has been this idea of the pendulum swinging so hard and so fast that we're essentially going to be making the other side, if that's what we want to call it, like just very angry and want to punch back harder. And
yeah.
it's very interesting because, like, ideologically or theologically or whatever, like I'm very far on the right, but I just see these extreme things that are happening and it kind of freaks me out for our future. I'm like, we are making people really mad. I don't know that
Yeah.
this is the right move. I don't know. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts around just that comment in general that things are swinging to the other end potentially, what you think about everything that's going on. I know you're not in America right now, but it feels like it's on the world stage, so I'm just curious as to your thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting not being in America and not being American
Mm,
because I often think that I can actually see the picture better than a lot of Americans can.
that makes
If you're
sense.
standing too close to a painting, like if you
Mm,
imagine a painting on the wall and you're standing like too close to it, you can't actually see the big picture. You have to like step back and zoom out,
mm.
and then you can actually see things a little better. And I don't have any dog in the fight, right? I can't even be a Democrat or a Republican because like I can't vote. I'm not American. Like I'm not a
Yeah.
resident.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of irrelevant. Of course, I have my personal convictions and my leanings and my beliefs.
Yeah.
And if I were an American, I would be much more of a Republican than a Democrat. But
Mm.
with that all said, to answer your question, I mean, not doing something that is right or not doing something that is just because you're worried about making somebody mad, like, yeah, like who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
cares? Like, should you do things just to make people mad or to, rile people up or to intentionally raise the temperature? No, I don't think that's wise. I think that the USA is such a fascinating country to me on so many levels. And one thing that is, whilst I understand it, I also find it freaking bizarre that in a country of over 350 million people, you have two political parties for all intents and purposes.
Dude.
Like that's insane. Like even in the UK, it's mostly binary, but there's like other parties that make a significant impact. If you look across Europe, many of them have two dominant parties, but there's still like three, four, five, six, eight different parties that might be
Mm.
represented in their parliament. And it's kind of fascinating that in such a gigantic, diverse country, in the true sense, in every sense of the word, diverse,
Yes.
that you kind of are still stuck between we can have this guy or we can have that gal, or we can have this guy or we can have this guy. We got red, we got blue, we got left, we got right. And what that does is it artificially creates more polarization
Mm.
because people who are really into politics or who are really into like culture war issues or anything, it just becomes a binary. I mean, I think maybe back on that 2019 Joe Rogan podcast, I think that was the one where I made a joke where we're living in a time where politics is binary, but gender is a spectrum,
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's spot on. I
right?
didn't get to that part in the
So,
interview yet, but that is a spot on
okay,
statement.
yeah. So
Wow.
so quite literally, for the past 10 years, people are saying, oh no, it's not just male and female or men and women or boys and girls. Like you can be anything. Pick your
Yeah, yeah.
pronouns, pick your gender, pick anything, right? That's
Hmm.
all on a spectrum. But when it comes to politics, it's like, nope, left or right,
Ooh.
Democrat or Republican,
Yes,
red or
yes.
blue. And people just think that way. Everyone, there will be people who they want to immediately put someone in one of those boxes. And what it does is it does a lot of things. It taps into tribalism,
Mm,
and it creates this in-group, out-group dynamic where whoever is on the side that's not in power feels like they're facing some sort of existential crisis. This is why every single time there's
totally.
an election cycle in the USA, you hear the same rhetoric. This is the most important election of our
Yes.
lifetimes. Whoever is on the other side, this person is a threat to democracy. Our democracy is over. Our
Yeah,
nation is
yeah.
over if my guy or gal doesn't win. And it's amazing because you hear it from people on both quote
Uh-huh.
unquote sides.
Yeah.
If you talk to someone who's more left leaning and you talk to them about, Trump winning, whether it's in 2016 or it's 2024, and like, these are the people, I'm going to move to Canada. No one ever moves. No one ever
Yeah,
does
yeah.
anything.
Uh-huh.
But there are people who genuinely think like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, they literally talk about this being the next coming of the Third Reich. They call him Hitler
Yes.
and not
Yes.
Nazis and white supremacists. Like they're saying it as if, oh my gosh, like, if you're gay, if you're a
Mm-hmm.
woman, if you're black, if you're an immigrant, whatever, like it's game over for you kind of thing, right? Like the
Yes.
the the rhetoric is so crazy. But then on the flip side, you also have it, I don't know, like 2020, Biden, officially won.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not going down that hole, but
I
for
went
all
down that
intents and
hole with another
purposes,
guest and I'm on the same page as you. Yes.
for all intents and purposes, he was president for the past 4 years, and it's like 2020 to 2024. Sure, there was some weird stuff, but did the entire country fall apart? Most people's day-to-day
Exactly.
lives, as it goes with your personal life, your health, your wealth, your happiness, your own family,
Yeah,
your children, the
exactly.
people around you, your community, your relationship with God, like what does Joe Biden have to do with that? And
Yeah,
I think people are
exactly.
way too worried about what's going on in the White House, and they're not worried about what's going on in their own house. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think another thing that happens with this polarization, last point I'll make on this, I could go down this a while, but
Very good.
what it also does is it can make people who are actually pretty close to each other in terms of their beliefs and their values it can psyop them into thinking that they're much, much further apart. I mean, I've never articulated this, but if you like imagine in your brain, like, say you've got, I don't know, a football field, and you've got the fence, you got the line in the middle, right? You got the dividing line, splitting it into halves, or a basketball court, whatever someone's favorite sport is.
Okay.
And you could have one person who is slightly to the left side of it and one person who's slightly to the right. Like they're pretty close.
Uh-huh.
They're
Uh-huh.
they're 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 pretty close. Um, but they're because of that line, this let's say, this one on the left is a Democrat, this one on the right is a Republican. This one leans a little more this way, this one leans a little more that way.
Yeah.
And then you could have someone who's like way out in the end zone, right? You got like far left, you got actual far right.
Mm-hmm.
According to the current system, those two guys on the right are on the same side.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And those two on
Exactly.
the left, right? One of them could be like a full on like communist, Antifa, whatever, whereas one of them's just like, I'm just kind of like a normal liberal person.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sort of classifies, it lumps these two people together. So those two in the middle are actually much closer in terms of their beliefs, their values, maybe their policy positions, all sorts of things. They could have probably have a pretty healthy conversation. They could be friends,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But they can be made to think that, oh, that person who's just, a bit to that end and has some different preferences to me or
Yeah.
sees the world slightly different or just, likes that candidate more than the other one. No, no, no. They're the one that's way out there. That's why you get all this rhetoric of, everyone's a Nazi, everyone's Hitler,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's a
Mm-hmm.
white supremacist, far right, everyone's far left. It's like, I
Yes.
don't know how someone can exist in the real world.
Yeah, I
And
mean, spot on. Sorry, keep going.
yeah, let me just say, I mean, okay, I'm not American, but I've been to 26 states
Mm.
and I've met thousands and thousands of Americans. I've met more Americans than most American people, and I've
Yeah.
seen more of the USA than most American people, just as a
Yeah.
byproduct of what I do for a living.
Yeah. I don't think I've been to
And
26 states.
oh, okay.
Yeah, go on.
But the idea that like half the country is racist, or half the country is like extra, or it's just, I'm like, do you people inhabit the real world? How can you actually go out and interact with people? You go to school, you're seeing the parents at your kid's school, you're going to the grocery store, you're going to the restaurant, you're walking around shopping malls, walking around cities, you're just seeing all these people. You don't know how people voted, you don't know they're like, no
Yeah,
one
yeah.
knows, no one cares. You're just seeing people. Most people are
Yes.
civil, most people are cordial. Of course, there are some terrible people in the world, and that exists everywhere. But for the
Yes.
most part, I think it would be reasonable to say that, the vast majority of Americans, just like the vast majority of Brits, just like the vast majority of most people, are decent, or at least trying to be. They're not
Yeah, yeah.
extremists. They don't hate you. They're not horrible
Yes.
bigots. They're certainly not Nazis who want to like
Mm-hmm.
genocide anybody.
Yeah.
Um, but you have people walking around in this mental matrix, quite literally for the past 10 years in some cases, where they have been convinced by their own lack of critical thinking, but also by political pundits, by the media, by social media,
Mm.
that, they're living in a truly, truly terrifying world. And that in itself is concerning.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the binary thing and how it essentially is like it's a psyop, if that's the word we want to use, that if you relate to something with someone on the other side, that suddenly, like this whole who you associate with, oh my gosh, it must mean you agree with everything they say. It's like, well, what if I agree with a few of the things that they say? I saw recently, and I don't know the details, so I mean, maybe I wouldn't agree with it when I heard more of the details, but I saw recently that AOC and I think it's a Republican out of Florida, are coming together for a joint bill to propose that there's a limit on the interest that credit cards can charge, like on your
Mm.
credit card
Oh, yeah.
interest. And I thought,
I did
oh
see that.
man, like I'm for that. But there's a lot that AOC does and says that we are not on the same page. But I find that in general across the board, that there are lots of leftists that like I agree with certain points that they make. It actually it'll trip me up sometimes if like there's a lot of things I don't agree with them on, and then there's a couple I do. I'm like, okay, let's really analyze this. But that is true across the board. And I feel like it goes without saying. It's like, dude, does anybody agree with everything anyone says or stands for? Which goes back to why it is very weird that we only have two political parties, and there really is such a spectrum there. But I mean, speaking of spectrum, even with like the gender thing, this is something my husband and I have talked about quite a bit. This idea that like, and I know that not everyone is in this camp, but I'm speaking just kind of generally. This idea that like if a boy maybe likes things that maybe some people are deeming more girly or feminine or whatever, it's like, are they the wrong gender? It's like, dude, I don't even know the word for that, like sexist or just some kind of weird, like, okay, so my boy likes flowers, but like flowers were created by God and they're beautiful. So that suddenly makes him feminine. So I feel like there's kind of something like, I don't know what that is, but I just think that that's interesting too. I actually don't know the connecting thought that made me jump from that to that, but just thinking about a spectrum and, even that too. It's like suddenly they're a boy or a girl. I guess that's the connecting thought, that suddenly if like I agree with someone on the other side, I'm either going to be in trouble for agreeing with them, or suddenly I'm a leftist. It's like, no, I'm just a person thinking through individual issues and landing where I land.
Mhm.
Man, it's so hard because when someone gets going, which I love hearing you get going, I want to like interrupt and be like, hey, what about this? Or what about that? Or like maybe I need to get in the habit of like taking notes when someone's talking, because I had like four different thoughts that just slipped out of my mind. Okay, one of them is coming back to me though. In the beginning of when you answered that question, you said that you should not stand up for what's right because you're worried about making, another person upset. That, on a side note, that's not really a side note. I feel like that is actually like a personal thing that God has been teaching me over the last few years. I don't know if you Googled my name at all, but I went through my own like cancellation about 4 years ago. And that was probably the biggest lesson that God taught me in the mix, was just this, or made me realize like, wow, I didn't think I did because I've been making content for so long, but I really have like a fear of man. I struggle with a fear of wanting to make everyone feel welcome, everyone feel okay. And, I walk this line of like wanting to make people feel that way. But like I said, ideologically, theologically, whatever, I'm definitely pretty far on the right. And so it's,
It's the
it's
curse.
something.
It's mostly it's the curse of femininity,
Oh my gosh. No,
if
I
I'm being
think
real
you're
with you.
totally right. No, I think you're totally right. And it's weird because it's not a curse, but it is in the sense that like,
In its proper context, it's not.
yeah, yeah, no,
It's
exactly.
like the equivalent of like male aggressiveness and
Mm,
competition, right?
that's
It's
spot
not
on.
something that when it's in its proper context, and it's being used in its virtuous, God-given role, it's not just good, it's absolutely necessary for a society, a culture, and a nation to survive. And if you don't
Mm.
believe me, then wait until there's any type of emergency.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
right?
Hmm.
People suddenly want the masculinity back,
That's
right?
exactly it. Okay, so we are back for the next ad in my car, and that is Bioptimizers. I've talked about Bioptimizers quite a bit. I legit am obsessed with their magnesium. It's kind of low-key changed my life, and I take it every single day. And I don't really take many supplements right now. Specifically when I was pregnant with my first, I used to have restless leg syndrome, and it was horrible. If you've struggled with it, you know. And when I was pregnant this last time around, I would start to struggle with it, but as long as I took my Bioptimizers magnesium, it would go away. That stuff is amazing, and I think it's because their magnesium actually has 7 different types of magnesium. So because of that, you are more likely to be able to absorb and utilize the magnesium because the different types are used for different things in your body. It helps with deep sleep. Like I said, it helps with muscle cramps. Magnesium helps with so many things, and the Bioptimizers magnesium, like I said, has 7 different types of magnesium. There's no other magnesium like that as far as I know on the market. All of their products are backed by extensive research, and I also recently started taking their mass zymes, which is supposed to be for protein absorption and building muscle, because that is one of my goals in life, God willing. And also they have a product called Sleep Breakthrough that Logan takes like a little mini scoop of at night. It's not technically a product made for kids, so I give him like a 1/4 of the dosing amount for him at night, and he loves it. I think it helps him sleep deeper and fall asleep faster, and all of their ingredients are super high quality. I just really recommend them. So if you want to check out Bioptimizers and you want to use my discount code, I'd be very grateful. It is NikkiP10 for 10% off. Once again, that is NikkiP10, and I think you're going to love their stuff.
And then, with the feminine traits, there is in its proper nurturing and mothering and familial and loving
Yes.
context, community context, that empathy and sympathy and kindness and wanting everybody to get along and not wanting huge amounts of conflict, preferring perhaps cooperation over competition.
Mm,
All of those things are correct, are good in their proper context. When you
mm,
apply them to national scale politics, it's a
yeah.
freaking disaster. It's an
Yeah.
absolute disaster. That's how you end up with some of the most of the garbage. I would
No, I
say
know. No, I know.
that we now currently have in the West. And because it's all about, oh, we need to be nice. Like if we need to be nice to the point of even lying, to the point of
Yeah.
entertaining delusions, to the point of allowing criminals to run right. Because we got to think about the criminals too.
Yeah,
Maybe he
yeah,
had a
yeah.
really hard life, so maybe we
Uh-huh.
should be like soft on him.
Yeah.
The immigration policy of just let everyone get in. Like it just honestly, it's it's so weird. Like it almost sounds like sexist to say it, but it's just like such an effeminate
Totally.
worldview. And effeminacy doesn't mean that it's even just women. You can have men with very effeminate mindsets, just like you can have.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's like a very female coded way of applying that to everything. And I see this very clearly. I mean, I've lived in quite a range of places and obviously traveled to many.
Hmm.
I've lived in Saudi Arabia. Right now, I live in the United Arab Emirates. I've lived in the UK. I've spent huge amounts of time in the US. I've been to 40 something countries. My family background is originally from Nigeria. So it's why I chuckle whenever people try to do whenever I even hear the notion that like any Anglosphere Western country is like a patriarchy, like it's freaking hilarious. I'm
Isn't
like,
that interesting? Okay, so then
it's like the opposite.
yes, that's so fascinating because that is something that's definitely fought about here in the States, right? About it being a patriarchy and just so male driven. And I'm with you, but me being with you is more from
Yeah.
like an intellectual perspective, from like reading and watching and observing. I've done some
Mhm.
traveling, but not much. Like I lived in Singapore, I visited the UK once, just not a ton of traveling. And so that is something that I specifically wanted to circle around in this interview. I want to hear more about that. So you lived in Saudi Arabia for 19 years, split apart,
Yeah,
something
about
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Take it away. You
Yeah,
have the
no
floor.
problem. Yeah. So to just to explain my background. So I was born in England. Both of my parents are originally from Nigeria. We moved to Saudi when I was a baby, when I was about 1 year old. So all my earliest memories begin in Saudi. I went to preschool there. I went to kindergarten up until fifth grade there. And then
Mm,
when I was 11 years old, I went to boarding school. So I
Mm.
went to boarding school in the UK from the age of 11. So I've been traveling internationally by myself since I was 11 years old. So back and forth between the two countries, UK, Saudi, for many, many years.
That's
And I
real
went to
free range
university.
parenting. Anybody who's following Alex Clark right now will be like, wow, look at that independence. But go on.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would describe it the way we were raised as free
Yeah,
range
yeah, yeah.
parenting. But
I'm picturing like the traveling by yourself, like, wow, look at
yeah,
you go on an
yeah.
airplane. Like,
Myself and all my siblings, I think we all developed a level of independence and maturity like pretty darn early. Maybe
mm,
because we all went to boarding school in countries that our parents were not in. So
yeah,
four of us
yeah.
to the UK. My eldest sister went to boarding school in Nigeria.
And you're one of
And
five?
yeah, I'm one of five. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
Go
one of
on.
five.
Yeah.
So yeah, you learn a lot from that. But yeah, I was in Saudi for the most part between, I don't know, I guess 1987 or 1988, and then early 2008. So yeah, I lived there for about 20 years.
Wow. And so, I mean, really what spurred me off onto circling to this now is the idea of what you said, Americans thinking that our society, or Westerners in general, thinking that our society is patriarchal and
Oh
that
my
that
gosh,
makes you giggle. Yeah.
it's
Do you want to
so feminized.
explain why that makes you giggle? Like what you
It's
experienced in the Middle East versus in Western countries?
it's man, where do I? It's a good question. I don't often struggle to articulate things, but I'm wondering where to
Where to
kind of
begin?
begin on this one. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, like
it's hard to describe something when something seems like obvious or self-evident from your
mm,
from your standpoint. Um, I don't know. Like when I look at the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, much of the USA, maybe not all of the USA. Like the USA, of all those countries, the USA is the most like male-coded one.
what do you mean male
Uh,
coded?
what I miss, what do I mean male-coded? Do you mean just like what does that term mean?
Well, I mean, like I kind of both. I kind of know that
Okay.
code when you someone says something is coded, it's like kind of it's in it. It's like not subversive, but it's part of it. But I don't
Yeah.
really get what you even mean by saying that
What
about
I
the
mean
US.
is, okay, what I mean is that, okay, let's take, okay, let me give concrete examples.
Okay.
Let's take everybody's first everybody's first two favorite amendments. The two that everyone knows and remembers. Number one and
Mm-hmm.
number two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The First Amendment and the Second Amendment are male coded.
Just because you think that's a male thing because women care more about
If you didn't
not
have
offending
founding fathers and
people.
if you had founding mothers instead of founding fathers, you would not have those two.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, that totally makes
Okay?
sense. Uh-huh. Which
You
is
wouldn't
so
have those two.
interesting because I'm so passionate about free speech, but go on.
And by the way, are you aware that the USA is the only country in the world that has that?
Yeah, and it creeps me
Like
out.
pretty
It
much.
makes me
Yeah.
feel very much like this with everything going on in the world stage. Like they're trying to take it.
Yeah.
They're trying to take it.
Yeah. So like for example, do you know what I don't quote me on this because it might not be exactly correct, but certainly I think but it could be one of the greatest predictors of political correctness and support for political correctness. Do you know what it is?
No.
Being female.
Oh, well, I mean, that totally makes sense. And I saw your tweet the
Yeah.
other day when you were saying, like, oh, I read this to my dad, and my dad just bust up laughing. He goes, oh my gosh, that's so just. And once again, this is very much you, but you said that they basically just rebranded lying when they,
Yeah.
made political correctness. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
women lie to each other all the time, and men lie to women all the time. Men
Mm,
tell the truth to each other. So I think actually one of the big issues we're having in the world is that very few people are willing to tell women the truth, and that leads
mm.
downstream to a lot of other problems. You'll get the truth from your brother, you'll get it from your dad,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah.
like generally speaking, women tell men the truth, and men tell men the truth. But women lie to other women all the time. Your friend is
Wow.
your friend is
Yeah.
300 freaking pounds, and her friend, oh, you're beautiful, babe. You're stunning. You look amazing.
Yeah,
Blah blah
yeah.
blah. Like, it's unreal. If one of my friends like weighs is even getting close to 300 pounds, like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, you're fat. Like, get in the gym, lose weight. Like I'll stop. Like it's
That's so
think
funny because, sorry, go on.
think about the body acceptance and
Yeah, yeah.
fat positivity and body acceptance movements.
Hmm,
Have you
hmm.
ever seen it targeted at men? It's all targeted at women. It's completely female coded. 100% of
Yeah.
it.
I mean, because
all
on
of
the
it.
flip side, I'm sure you've seen those videos. It's very sad when you see women harshly, like those on the street videos, like harshly judging men for things that they can't even control, like
Oh
their
yeah.
height or things like that. And all I think is,
Oh yeah.
what about body acceptance? Like, what happened to he can't even change that. Like, you could lose
No,
weight or tone up, and what? It's interesting though because I wouldn't have thought of that as male female necessarily. I guess I just hadn't really like sat
you
and
could say
thought about it.
masculine, feminine is more accurate if
Yeah,
we're gonna
but
go that way.
it's
Yeah.
interesting because I'm positive you're right that I have lied to friends and I'm trying to, and be encouraging or whatever. But I have also been told by friends before, like in certain situations that I'm thinking about specifically, where a friend would go like, "Oh, that's so cold. That's so like a dude." And I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yep.
Because I was literally
Yep.
just I thought I was being very gentle when I said it, but I was like, "Well,
Mm.
this is just what it is. Like these are the facts." And I just said them. And the person was like upset. I don't know if offended is the right word, but they literally said to me, "Oh my gosh, that's so cold. That's like a dude." And I said to her, like,
Yeah.
what do you mean that's like a guy?" And she's like,
Mm.
"Well, a guy would just say it, and you just said it." I said, "Yeah, but I didn't say it meanly." And it had to be
Yeah.
said, like in this situation that was happening. But that's fascinating.
It's fascinating. It's gosh, I could talk on this subject for hours because I'm so fascinated by like intergender dynamics. I think it's one of the most fascinating subjects in the world.
Yeah, well, and
But
especially when genders, like we said, are kind of being thrown to the wayside. But you looked like you were going to say something.
yeah, yeah. What was the point I was just about to make there? Yeah, so I mean, when I talk, so coming back to the idea of like, I don't know, something being more masculine coded or feminine coded,
Yeah.
I think that this is a massive overgeneralization, but I think what's been going on in the West in particular for the past 10 years with all the elements of the woke movement, whether that's the gender stuff or the transgender stuff or like the racial stuff, the whatever it is, it's essentially it's essentially a collective decision that subjective feelings are more important than objective reality.
Mm,
Okay, so if you think about like think about like pretty much every like I don't know at this point left or certainly woke issue. It's all under the matrix of okay, well, what is objectively true? Well, first of all, there's the whole debate around objective truth, but
I
if it
know.
does like the objective truth doesn't matter. Like how does it make people feel and what seems nice on a surface level, on a short-term level, what seems nice? And the reason I say this is all feminine coded is because this is how a lot of female interactions also take place. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying
Mm,
all women are like this or all like no, I'm not
yeah.
saying that. But generally speaking, we all know. Anyone who exists in the real world knows that men are in general more logical, rational, and
Yes.
mind-driven,
Yes.
whereas women are more emotional and
Yes.
heart-driven,
Yes.
right?
And
There's
that's not even a slam, by the way. Like like I get
no,
in the context of the conversation, yes, but that's not even a slam, like you said.
no.
Yeah.
If any heterosexual human being has been in a relationship or observed others in the vast majority of cases, again, there's always exceptions. There's
Always.
masculine women out there, and
Yeah.
there's feminine men out there. But in most cases, if you have a couple, you have a husband and a wife, you have a boyfriend and a girlfriend, you have a son and a daughter, you have
Yeah.
a niece and a nephew, and you actually observe their behavior from very, very young, the way they do things. Like
Yes.
we're just wired differently. We have different.
Yes.
It's not just the physique. It's not just the body that matters, of course,
Yes.
but our temperaments, the overall personality types, the interests, all of that. And gosh, so it's kind of fascinating. You can talk about this on an individual level, on a familial level, but also just on a societal or even a national level. And yeah, we've been living in an over feminized, very over feminized society for certainly our entire lifetimes, especially the last 10 years. But I would say our
Yeah.
entire lifetimes, like we've been living in, I'm not going to say we've been living in a matriarchy because that's also not true.
Hmm.
But I'd say perhaps we've been living in a more gynocentric society. That would probably be the most accurate way to describe it because that also cuts across like the political spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not like a conservative thing or a liberal thing. That's just like a societal thing. It's mostly gynocentric. And,
I don't think I've
when
ever
you're,
heard that word,
oh, no,
gynocentric. I don't think
yeah, it's
so.
gynocentric.
Or it's been
Oh,
thrown
okay,
around
yeah.
and I've just never like pinged it, but I'm like, oh, okay, I've never heard the word. So you were
Yeah,
saying that America, though, of the West is the most male coded because of
yeah.
our, like First and Second Amendment, which I totally see that.
Mhm.
How do I word this question? Maybe this question doesn't make sense. Do you think that's part of the attack on America? Do you think that that's part of the, like we were saying, the swing of like Donald Trump really stepping up and,
Mm.
the free speech that we really saw take center stage when Donald Trump ran the first time? Do you think that it's just we're watching the tension between this taking place? I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of people that do not want, especially because of the laws that are being like sneakily passed all across the US, anti-free speech laws. It seems like there's a lot of
Mm.
people that really want both of those amendments in particular to be wiped out or majorly adjusted.
100%. Oh, there are millions and millions of Americans who are completely opposed to freedom of speech and who are absolutely against the Second Amendment. Most people won't come out right and say that because it sounds too un-American.
Mm,
Like I'm from the UK. In the UK, like 95% of the population is against the Second Amendment.
yeah, yeah.
If you go to Canada, if you go to Australia, and all across Europe, like no, like
It's
if
so
you even
wild to me. I have a friend in
no,
England who said that to me the
completely
last time I
American.
saw her. She's like, "Why do you guys care about your guns so much?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
no, no, no,
"You don't care." She's like scared of them.
no, no. Yeah, and again, that's um, most like that's the norm in most like in most societies. Certainly in most Western societies, that is the perspective. And I would say that I could be wrong on this, but I would imagine that like if only women were allowed to vote in the USA, your Second Amendment would be gone in the next election cycle,
Yeah, I mean, probably,
right?
especially just because
Like
of
it.
population density in the cities, probably mostly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If only women could vote, like I mean, I could make an argument that is could even be more important for women than it is for men. But no, like it
Yeah,
would be.
that's exactly
Yeah,
it.
that would be gone. So in the US, there's still enough of a, again, it's a huge country, and there's still enough of a bulwark. There's still so many parts of the US, I mean, across the 50 states and all the different counties and cities and rural areas, there's still enough like genuine conservative people or like solid Christians or just people who are more like salt of the earth types, like rural. There's enough of that to maintain the sort of DNA of the country,
Yeah, I
which
mean,
if
if
you're, yeah, like
sorry.
most of the US is very different to New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles. Like those places are anomalies. They have huge populations,
Yeah.
but most of the country is not like that at all. So I mean the UK is cooked.
Yeah.
UK's the great in Great Britain, they're going to need to drop the great soon because the their best times. Like I don't know, and I say this as a Brit. Like I'm from the UK, but I mean I left for a lot of reasons. But since I
Mm.
left, it's just continuing to decline, and it's not like the US where there's been like some type of light on the horizon or some area like UK. Like I don't see any. It makes me sad to say this because I'm a natural optimist.
Ooh.
So when I'm pessimistic, it's a really bad situation. I think the UK is mostly cooked. Like it's stagnant at best, but
So
really it's declining.
So what about all these? Because I was under the impression that the Brexit people were like
Mhm.
the patriots of the UK or the more right-wing leaning people over
Okay. Oh,
there. You-
it's interesting that you think that because the Brexit thing was not a left-right thing.
Interesting. Okay.
No. In fact, this is an interesting point, looping back to something I was saying earlier.
Uh,
Actually, I think if you look at the voting patterns, most people on the more solid to hard right and solid to hard left were pro-Brexit, and most people more in the middle, whether they're conservative or Labour, like liberal or conservative, most of those people were against Brexit. Most of them were pro-Remain.
interesting.
Yeah, I think that actually reflected in the voting patterns, but it certainly was
Wow.
not it wasn't a left-right thing. Like a lot of people, like most Americans assume, like knowing me, most Americans who know me and know my views and stuff, like they all think they all think I was pro-Brexit, and actually I voted against it. I
Wow.
voted
Okay.
for Remain.
Okay. And why did you
Actually, if
vote to remain? Is that
oh
too complicated
yeah,
a question?
no, it's
Okay.
not. No, I can explain it quite easily.
Okay.
Um, so obviously, man, this is I can't believe that that vote was like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
almost.
Wow.
But my vote was actually kind of a conservative vote, and when I say conservative, I mean I'm okay with the status quo.
Okay.
So the EU has the UK has been part of the EU since it's for my entire lifetime.
Hmm.
So I know what the UK being in the EU
Looks like.
means
Yeah.
as far as visas, as far as business, as far as like whatever. Like I already know what it is. Like I know okay, like and you know, and I wasn't particularly upset or mad about it. And so whilst I certainly empathize and somewhat agree with the argument of just like absolute national sovereignty,
Mm.
right? I think that's kind of the strongest argument for Brexit, that it would increase the UK's sovereignty because you wouldn't have people in unelected officials in Brussels determining what immigration policy of the UK could be and so on. But the Leave campaign, you have to understand, Nikki, the Leave campaign they didn't really have a plan because people didn't think they were going to win. Even the people who were pushing the campaign didn't really think that they were going to win. So
Wow.
there wasn't like a clear plan. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to leave the UK, we're going to leave the EU, and then these are the next 5 steps. It was just like, let's get out. And then one day they won. That's why I don't know how much you know about British politics, but it's
Not a ton.
why it's why there was that period for years where they kept like changing prime ministers.
Yes,
I
I
mean, in the
remember
past,
that. Uh-huh.
yeah, I think since Brexit, I think we've had what, five, six prime
Woo.
ministers since that vote. Yeah.
Wow.
So, this person comes in and that person comes in. I mean, the Brexit itself didn't actually happen until like what, 2020?
Yeah, it took
The
forever, it
vote.
felt like.
It took 4 years, I think, for it to actually happen.
Wow.
And I don't know, was it a good idea? Was it a bad idea? To this day, I don't really know. Like I don't think it affected that much in either direction that people thought it was going to. Just like the 2016 American election, there was a lot of fear
Mm.
mongering, right? People
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh my gosh, if we leave the EU, it's over. And then, other people had, well, if we stay in the EU, it's over. My
Yeah.
personal view, being the super unneurotic person that I am, I was like, the probably won't be that different. Like,
Yeah. I like that
if
you're not that neurotic.
it's not just that I'm not neurotic. It's also just I'm a huge believer in independence and
Mm.
individual. I think a lot about like locus of control.
Mm.
Okay. The truth is, look, if you're a loser and you're that I don't even mean to, I'm not even trying to be harsh here, but if
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're if you're a loser and your life is a mess and your mindset is messed up and you don't take care of your body and you don't look after your stuff and whatever, the person who's in the mayor, governor, prime minister,
Yes,
president, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
exactly.
matter. You're still going to be a loser. You're still going to be a bum. You're still going to be
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm.
the things that are affecting your life have nothing to do with who's running things in Washington, D.C. If you're a winner, if you're a winner and you've got your health in order and you've got your life in order and you're taking care of your family and your community and you're plugged in and you've got good habits and you're doing the right thing every day and you're
Yeah,
exercising and you're eating, like if the president changes, okay, yeah, you might have preferred things to be another way.
yeah,
But who is, it doesn't matter that much. For the typical person, for the average
yeah,
Brit, who the prime minister is, it doesn't matter that much. In your day to day, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Typical American, who is sitting in office, certainly in DC, like tangibly. Sure, there will be some specific people who, I don't know, they're part of a specific program or they're receiving a specific benefit, which might be on right, like that type of thing. Okay,
yeah,
I get it. There's some stakes in the game, but for the vast majority of people, it's just like, man, the winners are going to win, losers are going to lose. And by the way, these are not like fixed categories. someone who's losing, or I'm
yes,
saying loser. Like I'm not
yes.
saying you're stuck in that position. My point is you're the one with the power.
Uh-huh.
You're the one
Mm-hmm.
with the ability to, like, what are you doing sitting around waiting for a politician to do that for you? They don't even know who you are. They don't even know your name.
Yes,
They don't
yes.
care about you. Do you know who does? You should.
Mm.
Your family should, your community should, and you should care
Yes,
about them. So if
yes.
you want to fix your family, if you want to fix your community, if you want to make sure your kids are doing okay. Like, what are you doing trying to outsource that to bureaucrats in DC? Like,
Oh gosh.
handle your business.
That's exactly it, outsourcing it to bureaucrats in DC. It's interesting because you saying all this, I'm like, yes, yes, I totally agree with you. I am on the same page as you. But that's been tested in the last few years, meaning, and I kind of mean like two different things here, but like when Trump was in office, like that's when we had the lockdowns, like the COVID vax, which if you Google my name, I'm an anti-vaxxer, but especially in that one, I'm like vehemently against it. And
Join the club.
that was rolled out by Trump. And that's
Yeah.
kind of a trip on a side note, especially when it comes to like when it came to voting this time around, because I wasn't going to vote for Kamala, but I very much sit in this camp of like, what you said, okay, what are they really going to do for us? Like the bureaucrats in DC. But also, I mean, I also, side note, am a little bit black pilled to the point of I don't even know that I believe that votes matter, but I'm not confident enough in that to where I wasn't going to vote. Like I still thought, okay, well, if I'm wrong, just show up and cast your vote. And like I said, simultaneously with that, holding hands, I'm very aware that like that was very annoying that the lockdowns and the vax were both rolled out by Trump. And I feel like there are a lot of people here in the States who have either forgotten about that or they've got their own narrative in their head, like he was forced into this position, which might be true. He had to make these decisions. He believed in those decisions. I think I still see him doubling down on the vax stuff, particularly like within his first week of office. He had someone rolled out talking about mRNA cancer, anti-cancer vaccines. I was like, oh no, here we go
I remember
again.
that, yeah.
But that being said, what you said about us really, like, it's about you taking responsibility for your life. You are in charge of the decisions that you make. I think that was even true during the lockdowns and the vaccines and the masking and all of that, because that was something that my husband kept saying the whole time. He just kept going, they can't force us. And he stood by that the whole time. That man only ever wore a mask when we were in an airport and we had to get on a plane. He never wore a mask anywhere. I know. And it feels a little bit weird sometimes to say it because I don't say that from the point of view of like, it's not like he doesn't care about anyone else and their health. It's obviously an entire worldview that's very thought out. And a lot of it has to do with control. A lot of it has to do with where he, was out in the world. It's not like he was in close quarters with people just coughing on them, whatever. I feel like I almost don't even need to give that disclaimer, but just saying. Yeah. But yeah, he was right looking back. He's like, no one can force people to take the vaccine. No one can force you to mask up. Like if you want something from them, like, you want to get on a plane, which we did a couple of times, it's like, then you do it. But it's really about what kind of life you want to live, your day to day with your family and your community. That's actually part of what prompted us to move to Idaho was all of the, it was disappointing to see what our local community, how they took a knee to a lot of these things.
Where were you before?
We were in Nashville. So originally we're from Los Angeles, but we had moved to Nashville about 4 years prior to that because we started entertaining the idea of having a family. And I literally could not picture having a family in Los Angeles. I thought we were going to be there our whole lives. We loved LA until we didn't. And then all of a sudden I was like, dude, how am I going to have kids here? And I say this every time I say this on the internet. That is not a slam to anyone in LA. People feel comfortable where they feel comfortable and someone's got to hold down the fort. But I knew for us, it was like, this is not where we're raising a family. So we were in Nashville. We loved it until COVID hit. And then it became very discouraging because, and we were like deep in the city. There's a lot of really conservative people that were not, standing for it or were not okay with it. But our local community deep in the city, it was really hard to even function day to day because everybody was so on board with all of that.
Yep.
You look like you have something you were going to say.
Oh, I can, I could say a lot. I mean, my whole experience during what I call the scamdemic,
dude,
was it was interesting. I went to 9 different countries during it.
Oh, wow.
And maybe like 8 or 9 different US states. And the similarities and the differences were both glaring and quite amazing, man. I've got some stories, man. I saw some weird stuff. I experienced some strange stuff.
What are some of the things that they're popping to your head?
Man, I think, to speak a bit broadly, I think that because most people, vast majority of people around the entire world during that time were fixed where they were. Most people were static.
Mm,
right? So most people, if you were in LA, you had the LA experience of the pandemic. If you were in New York City, you had the New York City thing.
yes.
If you were in Sweden, if you were in the UK, like all these different places, and was tons of similarities, but there was also so much. So even in California, I mean, you were in L. I guess you weren't in LA at the time, but
No, I
like
was in
the
Nashville.
different, like the difference between let's not even talk about states. The difference between Los Angeles County and Orange County.
I knew you were going to say that. Totally different, huh?
It was like you cross a magic line
Yeah,
and oh,
wow.
COVID is gone, right? Like
Wow.
you
That's
cross this line, oh, it's here. And it's bizarre. So I mean, because I was doing live events at the time, so I was doing events. Thousand. I'm speaking to a crowd of like 1,000 people in Florida. Do an event in Texas, 500 people, and then
Were these like
like
freedom events? Like what were you doing having events during that
I
time?
mean, I spoke to the like at the YAF National Conservative Student
Okay,
Conference.
okay.
I spoke at Young Americans for Liberty, their revolution event. I was speaking at more like conservative libertarian events. But in Texas, in Florida, whatever, like it was wide open. Like it was totally fine. You could
Wow.
you could have an event 1,000 people in the crowd. You see like three masks. You're looking at the entire crowd. You see maybe like three or four masks in there, and then
Wow.
and then you go to Washington D.C. or you go to Maryland or you go to L.A. or you go to Hawaii and like they won't even let me in the gym. They won't
Wow.
even let me in the gym. Like, I'm looking through the window of the gym. People are like bench pressing and deadlifting and running. Everyone's got masks on. People are wearing
Unbelievable.
gloves and stuff. And I'm like, this is the same. Like, yet yesterday I was here, and now this is like this, and it like
Wow.
keeps switching and changing. And then I went. Gosh, I went to a lot of countries. I went to obviously UK, US. Spent time in Portugal,
Wow.
Romania, Greece, UAE, Turkey, Mexico. Like Mexico,
Wow.
Mexico is an interesting one because like Mexico was open like during the whole thing, and then you might know in Europe, but Mexico was weird because they didn't have like that tight restrictions, but people were super brainwashed on the masks.
Huh. Interesting.
Um, like I saw people. You're asking for stories. How about people swimming in the ocean with masks on? That was a fun
Stop
story.
it. Stop. Seriously?
Oh, come on. Yeah, of course. Of course, everyone saw people.
Oh,
Is that much worse than driving your car alone with a mask on? That was
no.
happening all over the world.
Wow,
The
that's
whole restaurant thing
heartbreaking.
of people walking in, with their masks on, and then they
And
sit
then
down, you
sitting
take them off,
down. Yeah, it's
they have a meal, they
unbelievable.
stand. And people think, oh, that just happened in my city. I'm like, no, it didn't. That was happening in many, many cities across the world. And then pretty much the entire continent of Africa, like, mostly ignored the entire thing,
I mean, it's mind blowing. Talk about a
right?
psyop. Like, holy Toledo.
Holy moly. Like it was bonkers. I think to this day, I think the vax rate in Africa is under 10%.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, where are all the bodies? How come like they they breezed through the whole thing? No, barely any
Wow.
lockdowns. Like poorest continent in the world. You would have thought, wait, hang on, like
Yeah,
surely that place is
yeah,
going to get
exactly.
devastated, and they're just like, no, like let's go to work.
Wow. And
What
that's
the heck
really
is?
how they sold it in the beginning. It was really like, oh
Yeah.
my God, this is going to be like a historical, we are going to see bodies in the street.
Do you know what's so? There's so many things. Oh gosh, don't get me started on this topic because I can go forever.
It's
But
fine.
there's so many interesting insights about it, and one of them is that had all of this stuff happened even 20 years earlier,
Mm.
let alone 30 years earlier, they wouldn't have been able to do what they did.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean, Nikki, is that what made it possible is technology.
Oh, yes.
So what did they say that the kids should do? Oh, we got to pull all the kids out of school. What's the alternative?
Totally. Oh my gosh,
Right?
I'm not going to go
Work
off on
from
that, but that's
so
almost a separate
like
thing, I think, to subvert
yeah.
homeschooling, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, what the heck was remote working 20 years ago?
Yeah, that's a
What the heck
really
was
great
remote
point.
schooling 20? So part of the reason, I mean, there's lots of reasons like in Africa, but like in Africa, even if they had wanted to do the psyop that they did in like all these more economically developed parts of the world, they wouldn't have been able to because people have to go to work. Kids have to go to school. You can't just tell everyone, oh, just sit at home for the next 6 months and just like take out your laptop and get on your broadband. Like, what laptop? What broadband?
Yeah, yeah.
What the heck is a Zoom meeting? Like, no, I need to go to work.
Wow.
And if this had happened in like 1995 or even 2005, I'll tell you what how it would have played out. There would have been like a 2 to 3 week period where people would have been like, "Oh, this is seems a bit scary." I'm hearing this on the news and whatever. And then like if they're not seeing everybody dying around them, and they're like, okay, back to work,
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
back to school. It would have lasted a month tops. It would have been like a month. Maybe
Yes.
there would have been like a couple of places that got like hit, and oh, okay, maybe in this place people are actually seeing, oh, there seem to be a lot of hospitalizations, or I see people
Yeah.
a lot of people getting sick or something, and they probably just think, oh, it's a bad flu season. Um, it'd be like, oh, it's a bad flu season, and then yeah, just get on with it. So it's kind of fascinating how the technology itself is what enabled it, both in terms of the communication, but also in terms of people feeling comfortable enough that they can, oh, I can just sit at home and pop open my webcam, and I can, I
Yes,
can just do my
yes.
work this way. And then people get, how humans are, people get comfortable with things. People get used
Yeah.
to it. And then once people are used to it, they don't even, I don't know how it was where you were, but like I remember in the UK in particular, like a lot of people did not want lockdowns to end.
Yeah,
They
no,
did
that
not
was
want it
the
to end.
same. It was the same thing here in the cities. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. People didn't want it to end. It was like, I'm comfortable. A lot of people don't like their job anyway. A lot of people aren't
Yeah.
traveling that much anyway. And they're just like, hey, and then they sweeten the deal by handing out those stimulus checks. And it's like, oh, wow, I just gotta, you know,
Yes, that's
I just
exactly
gotta check
it.
it. I
Well,
just
and
gotta
speaking
check
of
in
the
the mail.
technology, the fear was stoked I mean, pretty much entirely through technology, because exactly like what you
Absolutely.
said, we weren't seeing dead bodies in the street. I will say, I think probably everybody knew someone who at some point got pretty
Sure.
sick, maybe
Hmm.
even, had to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
But the fear was primarily being stoked like through our phones, through the TVs.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I'm not in the camp of I know that there are people who quite literally, I mean, there's people who don't even think viruses exist, period.
Yeah,
I'm not in the camp of like, there was nothing going on and nobody got
totally.
sick and nobody, like that's not my position.
Yeah.
My position is the response was completely insane and completely disproportionate and completely irrational, and
Yeah.
it was not about public health. It was not about safety. It was not about people's well-being. I think it was a massive power grab, and it was a
Yes.
massive way to create billions and billions in wealth for a very small number of people.
Yeah, I mean, you just hit it on the
I
head.
don't
It
think
was
that's a
engineered.
yeah, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. It's just like that's what people do in emergency situations. If you have someone in a position of power and you give them the reins to even more power, it's going to be pretty hard for them to let go of that by choice.
Hmm.
And if you give someone an opportunity or a company an opportunity to make billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, potentially on a subscription model, even better, then they're going to be incentivized to do that. And they're going to want to get it into as many bodies as they can in this case, like with the product being the shots. So look, if
Yeah.
someone, whether someone took them or not, I don't care. I was always just against the mandates.
Yes,
I was always
exactly.
like, look, if you want to stay home, stay home. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. You can wear 5 masks. You
Yes.
can stay home. You could be still masking on staying home and still getting boosted right now. And I absolutely
Yeah.
support your right. I
Yeah. But I
100%
also
support
free
your right to
speech
do it.
so we can talk about it and you can keep your mind
Yeah.
open that you may potentially
Yeah.
be making a bad decision, but go for
Yeah.
it.
I also think you're crazy.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
but you might think I'm crazy and reckless.
Yes, yes,
So, but
exactly.
we live in a society, and if people have freedoms, then it also means they're allowed to make choices that you or I may disagree with, and that
Yeah.
cuts in all directions.
Yeah, and I think that on a side note, that's not a side note, that the vax fight is about to heat up even more. My mom feels
Mm.
super optimistic, and I get why she feels optimistic because in her worldview, especially because the internet wasn't so much a thing like when she was raising me, but she feels like she went from being like in a very small camp of people that are like, hey, there's a problem over here, like even around the childhood schedule, to like now this is a in everybody's face conversation that's taking place, not only because of COVID, although actually, yeah, I think that was kind of the major tipping point that made people be like, hey, what about all these other, jabs that we're, hoisting on these kids. But it's not that I don't feel so optimistic. It's that I think that that conversation is going to get more fierce. I think that people are going to become more protective over what they think is their health, through decisions that people are making to be jabbed or not jabbed and, mandates and all of that. But Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, that this is part of what's making me nervous. And this is kind of circling back to what you said before about like we shouldn't not do things because we're going to offend people. And I totally agree with you. And I don't know, maybe this is like an inappropriate question or thought, because once again, I know like you're not an American, but I do feel like you're a citizen of the world and you've been here a bit, and I'm
I'm an
interested to hear
honorary
your thoughts if
American.
you have
I've
any.
had a lot of people, a lot of my followers have been, trying to. I don't actually want to be an American citizen because then I'd
Okay.
have to pay taxes no matter where
Oh
I live in
yeah,
the
there
world.
you go. Yeah, let's not avoid that.
But
Taxation is theft.
it is. That's why I live in a tax-free country. I
Ah,
would be. It's one of many reasons. But
yeah.
yeah, no, but no. At heart, I have a deep love for the USA, and I have so many American people I love. The majority of my audience in everything that I do, from my music to my podcast to my writing, is in the US. So yeah,
That's
I have huge love for
fascinating.
the USA. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
make ask the question you wanted to.
Well, it's kind of like it's a half question, a half point, a thought that I'm just curious if you have any thoughts off of. But it is circling back to that idea of like everything that's going on right now with President Trump. Part of what makes me nervous is I'm wondering if there are precedents being set so that when the pendulum swings back to the other
Mhm.
side, because it probably will. It seems to historically go from like the Democrats to the Republicans, back and forth. I'm wondering if he's setting precedents so that they can not so that, but in turn, they can turn around and swing back even harder. I've been thinking this for a while, and then recently I went to a like Republican event out here in Idaho, and I don't know if I'm outing him by saying who it was, like whatever. I'm like, does it matter? He was probably filmed, but it was Sean Spicer, who used to be a press secretary for
Mm.
the White House. And he was basically saying that they had like sued Biden a couple of years ago. And I don't even remember the details, but basically the lawsuit set up, he like went in to sue them knowing that they were going to lose so that when the next cabinet came into place, whatever that precedent was that they had set, they were basically able to turn around and swing back. And it was like, oh, sorry, like this law had this already failed. I realize I'm not making sense, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. And that is a little bit what I'm concerned about what's happening now. Does it matter? Maybe it
Yeah.
still goes back to what you said. It
No,
doesn't matter.
well, look, I think I have a saying which is that don't bring weapons to a fight that you don't want used against you.
Oh, man.
Okay?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, yeah. So I totally understand your general concept of, well, what about when the other side gets the ring of power? What's that going to lead to? So the truth is, in terms of all the stuff that Trump has been doing over the last couple months, I haven't been keeping a close eye on it,
Mm.
and I don't know enough about the extraordinarily complicated American sort of the judicial process and
Yes, yes.
everything, what has to run through Congress and how the who the heck really knows how the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
federal government works. Like, I don't know. So I don't know what he is doing or has done that is like within the scope of normalcy. And yeah, absolutely, a president can do that.
Yeah.
And if there's any, I don't, are there particular things which
Concern.
he's doing which are like outside
Yeah,
of
I
a
I think
president's supposed remit?
well, I think what really has been standing out to me is just the tsunami of executive
Mm,
orders that have been taking
yeah,
place. That's really what it is. I'm like, I said to my parents, I'm like, dude, have there been any presidents in recent history that it's like, all right, we are going to sign executive order after executive order after, and it's like the press is coming to every single executive order, and it's like you can hardly even keep up with everything that's happening. And what my parents would say, and I mean, they might be totally right, is they were like, well, it's never really been like this before. Like, that's why he's having to do all of this. He has to like step up and make the changes. And that might be totally right. I mean, I guess I hope that that's what's right, but that's just what keeps popping up in my head is like, oh man,
yeah.
like we're
I
teeing
mean,
up the ball for them to swing hard back.
I'd be curious. I have no idea. I'd be curious to look at the number
Yeah, yeah.
of executive orders compared to Biden, compared to Obama, compared to Bush, and so on, and see if
Hmm.
actually, because the media could be, it could be the case that he's signing way more. It could
Yeah.
also be the case that the
Yeah, they're
coverage of
just
it
that's
is
totally
just
right.
very
Yeah.
different to
Uh-huh.
how it was when Biden was doing it or when Obama was
Yeah.
doing it. I don't personally have that info.
Yeah, it's a good
Maybe
point.
I'll look it up later.
You've
Um,
just prompted me. It's like, how about you do some basic Googling, Nikki? That's a really good point.
Yeah, and I also think that again, I'm far from an expert with the US system. But one thing that I do know is that it is extraordinarily robust
Mm.
with the way that the different branches are split
Like
up
you're
and
referring
the
to
way
like
you
checks
have
and
federalism.
balances.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
system is essentially designed for gridlock, which is part of
Yeah.
why like nothing ever really it's part
Yeah.
of why nothing ever really like changes that much because it's not really supposed to. So I think that the system of checks and balances, whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden or whether it would have been Kamala or whatever, it's part of why I don't think Americans should spend a huge amount of time and energy kind of like worrying that one single guy or gal
Mm.
is going to come into office and just like there are countries where that can happen. There are
Yeah.
countries where like okay, one person can literally come in and completely, for better or worse, they can just completely change
Yeah,
it. They just have
yeah.
like almost absolute power. There's not a Congress, there's not a Senate, there's not all these
Yeah.
checks and balances. There aren't 50 different states with their own governors and with their own laws. There's not a constitution. There's places where it's just like, all right, whoever's in there, they can do what the heck they want. They can be like, you know what, I'm scrapping that thing that says my term can only be 4 years and I'm going to just rule for 20.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's happening right now. That's been happening throughout our lives. Um, so yeah, I don't you know, I'll tell you something, Nikki. I kind of have political fatigue, which maybe
Yeah.
you've
Experienced at moments. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, which maybe you've noticed. It's one thing I love about Dubai because there's like no politics here. So
That is fascinating.
people talk about the politics in their home countries, and people are curious as to what's going on in the UK or USA, or there's so many Russians and Ukrainians here. Like people are curious as to what's happening on the global scene, but
In
within the nation
Dubai,
itself,
there's so many Russians and Ukrainians.
oh my gosh, huge
Interesting.
numbers, especially since the war broke out.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because this is one of the countries, the UAE, that like was not being like Russia-phobic, right? They were just like, hey, if you're
Uh,
if you're Russian and you're especially if you've got money, but if you're just a decent law-abiding citizen, like you and your family can come on in. We're not going to make it
wow.
we're not sanctioning you. We're not the UAE is kind of like this the Switzerland of the Middle East,
Huh.
right? Like they're not like they're just neutral. They're just chilling. They're just like everyone's just stacking money and making babies and looking after their kids and there's no
Wow.
crime and it's just normal, right? There's no political parties, there's no left right, there's no back and forth. Like you don't get a say in any of it anyway and it all just functions well. So no one
Wow.
who lives here is like mad at the government or mad at like there's just all of that stuff it just quietens. If I want to see it, then I open up X or I go online and I see what all my crazy American acquaintances are up to. But when it comes to here, it's just like it's like this black cloud just sort of lifts off
Okay.
and yeah,
So
everyone's
I
just
don't know much about Dubai. So when you say that there is
mm,
no political system, is it because I know Saudi Arabia is a theocracy, right? It is run
no,
like
it's
all
not.
of
No,
the
it's not.
it's not.
No, it's not. Mm,
Oh, and is it always not
no,
been that or is that recent?
no, not in our lifetime. It's never been. It hasn't been a theocracy in our lifetime. It's a
Oh,
monarchy.
okay.
No, it's a monarchy.
Oh, I did not know that. I
Yeah,
thought it was because Iran is a
yeah.
theocracy, right?
Ooh, yeah. Iran would be closer to one. It would certainly be closer to one.
Okay, okay.
I
I
don't
had
know.
them
I
in
don't
the
know exactly
same.
what they. No, no. The UAE is not a theocracy, not even slightly. UAE is also a monarchy. So the United Arab Emirates is seven different emirates. You can think of them as states if you want to.
Okay.
Abu Dhabi is the biggest by a mile.
Okay.
Abu Dhabi is the biggest and the richest. Dubai is actually the most famous one, but Abu Dhabi actually has way more money than Dubai does. Dubai, by the way, Dubai hasn't like barely any oil. Only 4% of the economy is oil. So
Wow.
people think Dubai is rich because of oil. It's like Dubai doesn't even have oil. So you've
Why is
probably heard of
Dubai
Abu Dhabi.
rich?
Um, Boy, it's basically like hardcore capitalism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like
Okay.
Dubai is one of the most, I mean, the UAE in general, all the Gulf states are actually incredibly capitalistic.
Hmm.
Like Saudi Arabia doesn't have taxes, the UAE doesn't have taxes, Bahrain doesn't have taxes, Kuwait doesn't have taxes, or if they do, they might have like a 5% VAT or something. But they all have no income tax, they all have no capital gains tax.
Wow.
Um, it's been like that our entire lifetimes, by the way. This is not new.
Wow. Okay,
This
so
is not new.
they're all monarchies.
Yeah, they're all monarchies.
So the
Yeah.
same family for like multiple
Yeah.
generations has been in power. Wow.
So each emirate has its sheikh, and then the sheikh of Abu Dhabi is the de facto leader of the overall country.
Is the sheikh like
Um,
the sheikh is like the king or the leader?
yeah, like you could kind of say like a sheikh is not literally a king, um, but yeah, they just have sheikhs here. So and by the way, like there's a real this is a really fascinating country in a lot of ways. So only 15% of the population is Emirati. So Emirati are citizens, nationals of the United Arab Emirates. It's
Wow.
80, 85% immigrant population.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. I think Dubai's 90. I think Dubai's 90-10. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So why would you say a lot of the people have come to the country? Like some of them are refugees, I guess you would say, like from
no, no,
Ukraine and
no, no,
Russia.
no, no. Well, I mean, they're not refugees. They're just like pretty well off people who were able to leave when stuff hit the fan.
Okay.
Yeah, the Russians are the it's Russians who are driving up the cost of everything in Dubai because like they're just buying up entire
Wait, that's so wild.
they're buying up so much property and stuff like yeah, but why is your question why do people move
Yeah, why
to
have so many
UAE?
people been coming there? Yeah.
Okay, I mean it depends on, some of it depends on country, but I can speak for Dubai specifically. So
Okay.
we've already talked about some. So
No
it
taxes.
is that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Um, Yeah, and high salaries too. So high salaries with no taxes. So
Wow.
I don't know if you were a doctor making, I don't know, 70,000 pounds a year in the UK. Like doctors are way paid far less in the UK than they are in the US, by the way. So let's say you're
Oh,
a doctor
interesting.
making $100,000 a year equivalent in the USA, in the UK, of which like 40,000 per year is like going to the government and you're keeping 60. Maybe you could move to Dubai and now you're making 200,000 and you're actually keeping 200,000. So
Wow.
you've more than tripled your salary. With that said, at the same
Wow.
time, there's essentially zero, there's essentially no crime. Like there's no
Wow.
crime.
And why
Like
do you think that is?
um, common sense stuff, strict immigration policy.
Okay.
That's the one that people always forget.
Hmm.
Like you can't live in Dubai unless you are employed or you have a business. Like so everyone who lives here is gainfully employed in some way, shape, or form. So you don't have like hundreds of thousands of people who are just hanging around not doing anything. There's zero welfare state. There's no welfare system.
Wow. So you're
So
not
it's
even
not it's
let
not
in the
like
country if unless you already have a job secured or you own a business.
yeah, yeah. Like
Wow.
your visa is connected to your employment.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which can actually be scary for some people working in certain areas because actually, if they lose their job, they can lose their visa.
Oh, okay.
Entrepreneurs like myself, like I don't need to worry about it. My visa is straight for at least the next 10 years. But
Okay.
yeah, so there's that strong rule of law. Like people
Hmm.
don't mess. Dubai has a reputation. Like everyone knows you don't mess around in Dubai. Everyone knows like don't take drugs. Like
I think that's why I thought it was a
don't even cuss
theocracy.
don't even cuss at people in the street. Don't like be,
Wow.
like no. Don't insult anyone's religion. It doesn't matter. Not just Islam. Don't insult if people who are used to insulting your Christianity or whatever, don't do that in don't do that in the UAE. Don't denigrate other people's religion. Don't like obviously don't steal from anyone. Don't physically harm anyone, and everyone will be fine. And people and everyone who's moving here is like, you hear that concept of like a social contract. I'm sure you've heard that
Mm-hmm.
term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are choosing to move here, you're essentially signing that contract. It doesn't matter if you're coming from India, Pakistan, the UK, Canada, US, Russia, Ukraine, everyone who's here, it's extraordinarily diverse city. And everyone's like here.
Because of that.
Yeah, yeah, because of that. Like everyone wants it to be safe.
Yeah,
Everyone,
yeah.
everyone wants it to be respectful. Everyone wants to. So yeah, so that's a big factor. I think the city itself is actually cool. Like it draws a huge amount of tourists. It's actually a massive tourist city. So the city itself is cool. It's always on an upward trajectory. Like I mean, 50 years ago, this place was nothing. So it's kind of fascinating to,
Wow.
I can look out my window and see the tallest building in the entire world.
Wow.
So this has just gone from being a place in the middle of nowhere, some tiny fishing village in a
Huh.
desert, to being like this massive global hub of technology and entrepreneurship. And there's so much wealth here. Like, I see on an average day, I probably see like at least 20 Rolls Royces. Like
Oh my
just seeing a
gosh.
seeing a Rolls Royce is like, I don't know, if I'm in England and I see a Rolls Royce, I notice it. I'm like, oh my gosh. Here it's like, oh, it's a car. It's a black car. Um,
Wow.
and it doesn't mean that everyone here is like super wealthy, by the way. Some people think like to live in Dubai, you've got to be a multimillionaire and this and that. No, most people here are like, middle class.
Okay.
Um, but there is a huge amount of wealth in the city. But it's just a great living standard. It's very, 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 very extraordinarily family friendly. Very
Wow.
pro life, by the way, totally pro life country.
Wow.
And very pro baby, very pro family, very like there's kids and babies freaking everywhere. Everyone like it's just very family friendly. You don't have to worry about like all the stuff that you normally have to worry about. You just don't have to you just don't have to worry about it and stress. Like they've just made an environment where it's like it's just chill and it's peaceful. And it's also an amazing travel hub. You've got direct flights to every single continent,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
most cities. I mean, you can fly direct to I think 10, maybe about 10 US cities from Dubai.
Wow. Direct.
Both, yeah, there's direct flights to
Yeah.
everywhere. You can direct flights to Australia, direct flights to India is only
Wow.
4 hours away. There's lots of people here from India. The UK is only 7 hours away on the plane. Russia's like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours away. So yeah, I mean, it's not even like, okay, you're in Dubai and now you have to like stay here forever. Like it's quite a transient place. Like a lot of people come and they go, maybe their headquarters
Okay.
is here. Also, to maintain your residency, you only need to be here for one day every 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
if you're like a freelancer, you're someone who travels a lot or whatever, you can literally like if you want, you can like pop in and then you can go off to Portugal or Bali or whatever you want, and you can kind of just dip back in and maintain your residence. You don't need to like
Wow.
spend 183 days a year or whatever it is in most places. So they've just made an environment that's extraordinarily appealing to entrepreneurs, to
Huh.
families. So if you're someone who just wants to like live your life and raise your kids and work hard and not be burdened or bothered with crime and gigantic taxes and this and culture wars and woke crap. It's super anti-woke here. Like no woke, no
Wow.
wokeness. Like I remember coming here once, was it last year or the year before? And it was funny because I'd been in the UK, my home country. Like I go back to the UK a lot.
Okay.
But I'd been in the UK during June, right? During Pride Month.
Yeah.
And you got just like in the States, right? You got the onslaught of just
Yeah. It's just everywhere.
everywhere. And then it was so funny. I came to Dubai and it was just like I've never even
None of
seen a
it.
rainbow. I've never even seen a rainbow
You've
flag
never
in
even seen a rainbow flag.
no,
Wow.
no,
Okay,
no,
so
no,
but this is
no.
maybe all the things you're saying are leading me to think that that is why I thought it was a theocracy. And I
Oh
guess
no.
I'm kind of wondering, questioning, do you think that part of the environment being like the way that it is has anything to do with the
Islam.
yeah, Islam, with the family basically
Yeah.
putting these values in place and it's like this is what we're going to enforce.
Yeah, so the UAE is interesting. So a lot of people do ask me about like freedom of religion here.
Yeah,
People are
that
like,
was what I was going to ask because if
yeah,
you're
because most people don't know. Again, we want to talk like most Westerners have been psyoped about the Middle East like their
mm,
entire lives,
yeah.
right? They think of Middle East and they think of like the war. They think of like Gaza and war in Syria and
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein and Iraq
Uh-huh.
and like that's kind of where their brains go. 9/11, that's where their brains go.
Yeah.
They don't think about like the Gulf states. They don't think about Kuwait and Oman and Saudi and UAE and
Mm,
Qatar. Like, um, obviously there's bad parts in the Middle East.
yeah.
Um,
There's bad parts of the
so
US.
and
Yeah.
they're pretty darn bad. Like
Yeah, yeah.
some of the bad parts of the U.S. are like some of the scariest places I've been to.
Wow.
Um, and okay, so about freedom of so there's freedom of religion in UAE. In fact, it's like enshrined in their constitution essentially.
Wow.
In fact, in Abu Dhabi, there's something called the Abrahamic Family House, where you have a synagogue, a Catholic church, and a mosque all on the same site. It's the first of its kind in the entire world.
Whoa. Okay.
And it
Wow,
was a
that's
project which
fascinating.
was like signed off from like the Pope, major Jewish leaders, major Islamic leaders, and so on. So like as a symbol for tolerance, and they're all active as well. Like
Wow.
they have services.
Interesting.
Actually, here's something you probably, I'll give you a couple things you probably didn't know.
Yeah. Shoot them away.
20% of the population is Christian in Dubai.
Wow. Did not know that.
Yep. There's many, dozens of churches.
Hmm.
The I think the second biggest Catholic parish in the world, I believe, is in the UAE.
Whoa.
It might even be in Dubai. I think it's Dubai, not Abu Dhabi. I think Dubai has the second biggest Catholic parish in the world. St. Mary's Church.
Wow. You
St.
mean like
Mary's
in
Church
terms
in
of like
Dubai.
attendance, like the amount of people that
Yes.
come?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's massive. I don't even know the number, but you can look up St. Mary's Church in Dubai. I'm not a Catholic, but they have one of the biggest Catholic parishes, I believe. Someone fact check me on that, but I think
Okay.
that's true. But yeah, there's freedom of religion. Obviously, like there's lots of Muslims here, so there's mosques. The only thing that you cannot do, you're totally free. You can wear your cross, you can have your Bible, you can go to church 5 times every Sunday if you want to.
Mm.
The only thing that you can't do is you can't proselytize to like the local Muslim population.
I knew you were going to say that. And by
Yeah.
proselytize, do you mean like actively, like I'm out on the street with a sign and whatever? Or do you
Y-
mean like you can't even
Yeah.
be having
They
these
they generally don't
conversations?
they generally don't like you don't see signs here. Protests aren't a
Yeah.
thing here.
But are
Um,
you able to
but
talk to people? Like, I've heard, I don't know
yeah, I
if this is
mean,
true, but like in China,
okay.
supposedly you can end up in prison for even like having
Yeah.
these conversations
Oh no,
or,
no, no,
yeah,
no,
it's not like
no, no,
that.
that no, that no, no, that's fine. I've had conversations on my podcast, like filmed in studios in Dubai, like talking about
Okay.
like talking about faith stuff. No, that's completely fine. Um, they're just like, and I understand this because part of what's going on in like Europe in particular is that there's a sort of one way, there's like a unidirectional tolerance that's going on.
Mm,
So um, in the UK, like a lot of churches are turning into mosques, and people are only like less than 5% of the British population goes to church weekly. It's
yeah.
Christianity is still it's actually much stronger in the USA than it is in the UK and
Yeah.
much of Europe. And there's this idea. You kind of see it, particularly from the left aisle. Like they kind of want to bend over backwards to like everything, but they don't understand that if they don't hold on to their own values and their own faith and their own religion, that over the course of time, people who believe more strongly in their own stuff than they do
Hmm.
are going to take over. So you have people who are complaining about churches being turned into mosques, and I'm like, oh, bro, when did you last go to church? And they're like,
Yes,
oh, I don't go to church.
exactly.
It's like, well, you're not going to have a vacuum. That's not how humanity works.
Yes,
So, you know, some people will sort of almost take advantage of your own liberalism to go and plant their own roots and spread
totally.
the's own things. So,
Yes.
so I think over here in the Islamic world in general, certainly in the Gulf states, like there's a lot of religious tolerance and respect, but
Mm,
it's like a two-way thing. It's just like, look, you're totally welcome to. You can be a Christian, you can be a Hindu, you can be Jewish, you can go to church, you can go to synagogue, you can have your services, you can read your holy texts. All of that is fine, but just respect. Like we're who we
we're in
are,
charge. This is our
and
culture, our
yeah,
government.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's kind of even fascinating because, like I said, the population is 85% immigrants,
Wow.
right? So,
Wow.
so it's not even like it's a majority minority thing. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like look, despite all the liberalism and the progress and the modernity and the amenities and all that and the freedom, at the core, it's still a quote unquote Islamic country. It's it's
Yeah.
it's not a theocracy. It's not like some oppressive regime or something.
Yeah.
But at the core, that's kind of where they are, and that maintains the conservative values. It's quite fascinating, and
Hmm.
obviously I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so
Hmm.
my view on like Islam and Muslims and Christians and so on, like is I don't just think, I know it's different to how like the average American
Yeah.
Christian, for example, may think about it. And think that there's absolutely no these things cannot coexist at all. And this is like if you look at actual values, if you look at like actual values and the way like what people believe, like whether they are certainly amongst the Abrahamic faiths, I can't speak for everyone else, but like if you look at like what Christians, Jews, and Muslims believe in terms of like values and principles and morality,
Yeah. They're very similar
it's
on that
very
first.
very similar.
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
like the one of the most biggest, and this is obviously a huge fundamental and an important theological difference is, the question of like, who was Jesus Christ?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So in Christianity, we believe he's the Son of God and is God. We believe in the Trinity. We believe in the resurrection.
Hmm.
In Islam, they believe that he's the second most important prophet and that they actually believe he's the Messiah, but they don't believe he's the Son of God. They don't believe that God can be embodied.
Hmm.
In Judaism, they, pretty much reject him outright, but
Hmm.
we share the Old Testament.
Yes. Yes.
So, for example, like you can't insult Jesus here.
Wow.
No, like people, this is what I mean. Like, sad, like a lot of Christians in the West are like pretty ignorant when it comes to this. Like because they don't understand, like Jesus is like revered in Islam. So people
Wow.
know like about, don't insult like, the Prophet Muhammad or whatever,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
Jesus is like Muslims love Jesus.
Yeah.
Like they don't believe in his identity and what's the what's the word? The
Deity.
holiness is in like the yes, deity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Uh-huh.
in the deity, but like
Yeah.
he's like in the same way Christians would, would revere Paul or Moses or Abraham and so on.
Yeah.
Like he's like a very core
Important
thing.
part.
It's not like
Yes.
yeah, like Muslims are not like anti Jesus or
Yes.
something, like quite
Yes.
the opposite.
Hmm.
And because here, like I said, the way they think about things is differently. So it's, freedom of speech is like a very core thing, as we talked about in America, First Amendment. But here it's like they believe very strongly in, how would I put it? Like just religion, like just respect and reverence.
Mm.
Do you kind of see what I mean? So the way they would view it, and I can't speak. Maybe you should get like maybe get someone who's like actually from this part of the world
Yeah. Yeah.
on here. But the way I understand it is, because I've even had conversations with actually a guy I know who I'm acquainted, who I'm like, I could say I'm friends with, who's a Saudi guy who lives in the UAE, and we
Okay.
had this interesting conversation just to, even about freedom of speech,
Mm.
and his view, which is ironically, it's not actually that dissimilar to how like some leftists may argue in certain fashion, but on a different front, right? Not about like LGBT or like racial issues or whatever, but like it's kind of like what is the like his view is kind of like what is the upside of allowing people to attack, and denigrate other people's faith?
Hmm.
Right? So he's like no, like that should be protected. Like why should somebody attack Islam? Why should somebody attack Christianity? Why should we let people mock Jesus, mock Muhammad, if there are billions of people around the world who believe in these things. So if we have a society where they're all living amongst each other,
Yeah.
what would be the benefit of letting
Yes.
someone go out on the street and burn a Quran or burn a Bible or like
Totally.
just be so that's their viewpoint. So
Yeah.
from a British or certainly an American mindset or something, someone might think, well, freedom of speech above all, right? And I totally understand that position, but I can also understand their position of like, yeah, I mean, like most of us, even if we had the right to, we wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean,
And
debating
here,
something is
and
different than burning a Bible or a
yeah,
Quran.
yeah,
Yeah.
in general, like I'm generally of the, there's a whole conversation about what should be in law and what shouldn't. But I
Mm.
would certainly say, as a general moral and social code, it's good to be respectful and polite to people. This
Yes.
doesn't mean
Yes.
you don't stand by your values. It doesn't mean you never have like difficult conversations or debates or rebuke someone or something.
Yeah.
It's not saying that, but it's like like, even with I'll be real with you. Like even with this whole like, I don't know, the obsession with the LGBT stuff in the Western world, okay?
Mm,
Like when it comes to like an actual homosexual person or an actual I have actually met a few people who identify as transgender. Like in all my travels and all the people I've met, I've met more people like that than people think.
yeah.
I'm not insulting to them. I'm not
Yeah.
rude to
No,
them. I'm not
it's
nasty. I'm not. I wouldn't be, right? So
no, I
someone might
know.
see some of the stuff I'm saying about like, a man can't be a woman and blah blah, and I will stand on that.
Yeah, yeah.
But when it comes to actually dealing with a human being, like if you treat me with respect and
Yes.
politeness, and I believe you're made in God's image in the same way I am, like
Yes.
I'm not going to be sure. We might have like a huge disagreement on the nature of gender, right? The nature of these things or whatever. But I'm not going to like go out of my way to just
Just
be mean
be
to you or to
yes,
like,
exactly. Well,
yeah,
you're
like
like talking
so.
about old school like tolerance. I'm not trying to take this from you, but yes, I'm right
No,
there
go
with you
ahead.
that it's like tolerating how do I put this in? I've had this conversation with my dad many times that I think there's a huge difference, like you said, between respecting someone, showing them love, being kind to them, but disagreeing with them. But it seems
Mhm.
like I said, on a side note that I'm not trying to take away from the train of thought that you're on, it seems like there are a lot of people that are far left that have decided that no, being tolerant actually means not disagreeing with them. It's like, no, you can say, like I said about my friend that was like, that's like a man. I wasn't being rude. Genuinely, I wasn't being rude, but because I was just saying it how it was, that was rude in and of itself. And so that's where
Yeah.
for me, it's like I think that people should be allowed to debate and have difference of opinions, but
Mm.
it's the rudeness, like you said, the treating someone like they're not human, the making fun
Yeah.
of them. That's where
Yeah.
the line is for me. I hijacked that from you,
Yeah.
but go on.
No, no, it's okay. So, and so, this is a really fascinating part of the world because it also shows, I hear a lot of people on the right and a lot of conservatives in the UK and US in particular, kind of spitting out the line that, diversity doesn't work,
Mm,
or they like connect diversity to
yes.
lawlessness.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Totally. Yes.
I'm like, look, I'm not here. I'm not some diversity pusher saying that like everywhere needs to be some,
Totally.
you force these. Be like, no, like I like nations and cultures being how they are,
Yes,
and
exactly.
it's all good. Some places are more mixed, some places are less mixed. Like whatever, I don't care.
Yes.
Just let
But
it
the
let it be
idea that it
organic.
inherently,
But
exactly. Yes, go on.
yeah, like yeah, I'm like, no, the problem is lawlessness.
Yes,
Like when
exactly.
you look at these nations and you're looking at what's happening in Europe and you're looking at, from who is coming in to begin from immigration to begin with,
Yeah.
who is even in your country, right? So, like I said, in the UAE, you want to know part of the safety thing. It's like, well, who do we even let in, right? You're not having, this isn't a nation where you've got like a million people who are here who like entered illegally and they're not even meant to be here.
Yeah.
And they also couldn't, there's no incentive, there's no welfare state,
Yeah, that's
right?
fascinating.
There's nothing to mooch off of. Like, so even if you did somehow land yourself in Dubai,
Yeah.
like unless you've got a ton of savings, in which case they're probably not worried about you. But like, what are
Mm,
you going to do anyway? There's no healthcare system that you can like leech off of. There's no free housing. There's
yes,
no free
yes.
money. That like all of that stuff is it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So in the UK and in the US, you kind of have this like terrible 1-2 punch where you have like a porous border and you have incentives for people to come over where you're going to give them free stuff. So it's like, well, if you can somehow get in, then
Yes.
you're also going to be taken care of. And it's like, well, that's a starting point for a lot of the other, like that's where the lawlessness begins. And then
Yes.
obviously you can talk about like the actual policies and being soft on crime and letting violent criminals back out onto the street for whatever reason. And it happens in the UK, it happens in the States. You've got these
Hmm.
stabbings and shootings, and you've got terrorist attacks going on in Europe and so on. And it's like you are it's the lack of law and order and the lack of, again, that masculine framing of being able to say no,
Mm,
to draw lines and boundaries and say this is not acceptable. No, we can't have this. Like
yes.
when I'm in the, again, less so with Americans because more Americans, the USA still has the death penalty, for example. We're
Mm,
going to go a little dark here,
yeah, yeah, it's
but
good.
obviously that's abolished completely in all of Europe,
Oh, I
right?
don't know that I knew that. Okay.
Yeah, zero countries in Europe. It's completely abolished in Europe. every country used to have it completely abolished now, abolished in Australia, abolished in New Zealand, abolished in Canada.
Okay.
Um, and I'm just using this as like a somewhat extreme example to kind of make my point. And I'm kind of like, and again, I'm in a part of the world where, yeah, they absolutely do have that. And they
Mm,
should,
mm.
right? Because if you go out and you want to murder a whole bunch of people, like, pardon, my sympathy is not is
Oh, I
is
know.
not with you,
Yeah, yeah. No.
and even from a Christian perspective, like the Bible's not anti-death
No, I know. No,
penalty.
I
No.
know.
So it's like, I don't know, just with everything, like anything that could be a deterrent, it's just, oh, let's just be no, let's just try to be nice to everyone. Oh, you went out and you did that terrible thing, but like
Yeah, yeah.
maybe if we were just nicer, maybe if we just sent you a social work. Remember
Oh
the defund the police? Oh,
gosh.
just send in social workers. I'm like,
Whew. Yeah, no, I was going to say the only part of me that is anti the death penalty is the part of me that doesn't trust the government. That's the
I
only
get that
I'm
part.
just like my husband and I have talked I talked about this with another
Mm,
guest about the Second Amendment, about guns, how it's like, okay, yes, the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms is not only there so that you can protect yourself, you can be the first line of defense versus depending on other people if someone's coming into your property, but also it was for us to protect ourselves against the government. But
yes.
nowadays, that almost feels ridiculous. Like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to be able to protect myself against the government. And so, even like, if the police or the military are corrupt, you're kind of just like, what are you going to do with your guns? You got to, if you're going to defend yourself against the government, you are going to have some high level, like really intricately planned stuff with your neighbors and your friends and a huge community with
Mm.
who all is bearing arms to stand up against the
And
government. And it's
and
just
do you know
not going
what?
to happen.
I would debate that.
Oh, yes, tell me.
Okay, who has the most powerful military in the world?
Are you going to say that it's the private citizens of America with all of their arms?
No,
No.
I'm going to say it's the U.S. government.
Oh, okay, yes.
But was it easy for them to just steamroll Vietnam? Was it easy for them to steamroll Afghanistan? And it's like places where you've got guys with literal AKs and homemade bombs
Yeah,
who are
yeah.
like,
That's a good point.
right?
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah, and they're fighting for freaking like 20 years
Yeah,
in some
yeah.
places. Like it, no, seriously, like it's not.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be that straightforward. And I also think like the military and police wouldn't. They're citizens too.
Yeah,
So
I
the
hope. I'm going to
idea
try
that
not to go down
the
that whole wormhole, but yes.
yeah, I have done the thought experiment, like the idea that like the whole military would just turn on their friends and family and all that. Like,
You're
I
probably
don't think
right.
they
That's
would.
probably a more balanced actual
Yeah.
position. I get a little conspiratorial and weird. Like during COVID, when the police were arresting moms who brought their kids to
Yeah.
playgrounds, that really left me feeling like, are you serious? You're just going to go
Yeah.
do your job, or like medical kidnappings that take place in the US out at hospitals and then are, and I don't want to say often, but they have regularly been overturned as like, oh, oops, yeah, we were wrong. It's like, you can't get that time back. You took that kid from their parents, and the officer did it because he was just doing his job. But I think I've kind of gotten to this place where it's like it's a little false, like I'm projecting onto too wide of a population. And you are probably the more balanced view is probably the correct view. That's exactly it. Are they going
Yeah.
to turn on their friends and family?
Yeah. No, I don't think they would. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, when you join the military, what are you supposed to? It's like when you become president, you say that you're going to defend the Constitution, right?
yeah.
And like when you're in the military, I mean, your allegiance is to what's your allegiance to? I
I
don't
think
think it's
you're.
not to the,
I think it's to the president. I should look
is it
into
to the
this, but my
president?
memory is telling
Yeah.
me that it's like he's the commander in chief
Okay.
and that it's the president. Someone in the comments, I'm sure, will
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah,
that's
I'm wondering
where
if it's like to the president or to the country or to the Constitution. Like, I don't know, but
all of the
yeah, I
above,
mean,
maybe.
these are real human beings. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
there are people in there who would like, almost like robots, just like
Yeah, yeah, follow.
turn the guns on whoever you're told to. But
Oh,
I'm sure there's plenty of men and women there who like would be if they were given an instruction that was genuinely
yeah,
like
yeah. As long as they haven't been
the
injected with something creepy that like alters their mind. I'm like, oh God, stop injecting them.
yeah,
But yeah, I just derailed you
I think
though.
if we no, it's okay, Nikki. I think if we ever get to certain scenarios, I'm always just like, well, if we ever in that scenario, like I think we've got just a lot more to worry about in general. It's like this is a bit of a tangent, but like I'm a big Bitcoin guy and I've
Oh,
been
of
for
course you
years,
are. That's
right?
awesome.
And yeah, I'm not going to go on a huge Bitcoin thing, but like one of the pushbacks like I often get is, oh well, like what if the electricity goes out and the internet goes out and like all the computers down? I'm like, bro, if all that happens, like Bitcoin is gonna not be my top concern. Like
That's
if we're in
exactly
a
it. No, you're right.
if we're, also, by the way, like the actual main money system that runs US dollars and euros and pound, like if all the computers and the internet, if all that goes down, like most of it is digital. Most of the dollars are digital. They're not like
Yes.
physical notes. So if
Yeah.
that all goes down, like we're all like we've reached a
Cooked.
stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a we're focusing on different things at that point. We are really
yeah, that's
community
like,
building locally there.
yeah, that's like you need just canned food and ammo and petrol, right? Like that's the society. We're
Yeah.
in like Mad Max territory. And I also
Oof.
have my plan for that, but I hope we don't live to see it. So
Yeah, I hope we don't live to see it too. I feel like, I mean, I'm happy with it. We didn't touch that much on Saudi Arabia, but I like where we came kind of here at the end because that
mm,
is something that I've really realized within the last 5 years that, like, as a Westerner, as an American, that so much of my knowledge of Islam and just Middle Easterners has been fed to me through the news. So in the last like 5 years, I've kind of gone out of my way to listen to stories from people like you, to listen to books kind of discussing the Quran, listen to different pastors that I like that go to the Middle East and have debates with different Muslims. And I find it very fascinating because exactly what you said has proven to be spot on for me, that it's been very surprising to see, like, okay, so just like the US, there are cities, there are areas, there are states that are like dangerous, scary, maybe some radicals, but there are lots of areas, lots of people, countries where it's actually in practice, they're living very peaceful lives and they're coexisting, I guess that's the phrase we'd say, with people of other
yeah.
faiths.
Nikki, I've never been to a country where I felt like the majority of people were bad or
Look at that.
even close to it. I don't think it exists. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that the vast majority of human beings on this planet, regardless of their nationality, their race, their ethnicity, their age, their religion or lack thereof, the vast majority of people are decent or at least trying to be.
Yeah, there you go.
People who are truly malevolent and predatory and extreme and who want to hurt other in any demographic, there is small percent.
Mm.
There are a small percent. You know, I like to bring up El Salvador in this. I went to El Salvador for the first time last year. And have you
Okay.
seen like do you have some
I know that
familiarity
it's
with?
like dangerous. There's a lot of gang stuff happening over there, supposedly. Is that what you're referring
It's the
to?
safe. It's the safest country in the Western Hemisphere now.
Wow. When you say now, does that mean like hyper
I
recently?
mean, as of about the last 2 to 3 years, it used to be
Wow.
it used to have the highest homicide rate in the world.
Wow.
It's now the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. It has a lower homicide rate than Canada, lower than the UK, much lower than the US. They've dropped it by 99%
Okay, this is ringing a bell. Like
in
my
under
parents
10
brought this
years.
up the other day and I
Yeah.
didn't really know what they were talking about. Why
Okay.
is that?
They've got the most based president on the
Okay,
planet,
that's what they were talking. Yes, this is now ringing a
Nayib
bell.
Bukele. But the reason I'd bring up El Salvador is because so think of this: country of 6 million people had the highest homicide rate in the world. At its worst, it had triple the homicide rate of Haiti.
Oh my
That's that's
gosh.
that's not good. Haiti's not a safe place. Okay,
Wow.
that's how bad it was. So 10 years ago, everything you just said, everything you've like probably heard, El Salvador,
Yeah.
MS-13
Yes,
gangs, like
yes.
that was very real. Okay, they have put 60,000 people in prison.
Holy
Keep in
Toledo.
mind, keep in mind, 6 million population, 60,000. Do the math. 1%. They
Wow.
put 1% of the population in prison, and they have dropped the homicide rate by 99%.
Whew, that is breathtaking. Like, geez.
So when I make my point about most people being decent,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. It's
that's
like
like a
case in
real
point.
world example. Yes. Think of
Yes.
like what percentage of Americans do all the murders?
I don't even know.
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you had like
Zero point.
a
No,
number.
I don't
A
know.
tiny percentage.
It's going to be under 1%,
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
right? But that's my point. It's like a tiny fraction of like what percentage of like you get this all the time. I mean, even in the US, like people like to fearmonger around like these crazy radical Christians, and they're like, what percentage of Christians are
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
actually are gonna come, with a freaking like
Yeah.
it's such
Not
a
many of us are
it,
Westboro Baptist attendees,
yeah,
like
but people love to get stuck on the
and
extreme, and
I'm
of
a
course,
pretty radical Christian at this point in my life, and those people, like, I don't even touch them.
but yeah, you're not like I'm talking like
Dangerous.
dangerous. I'm
Yes.
talking like
No.
extremism. I'm talking like
Yeah.
dangerous
Yeah.
extremism. And this is the problem, because do Muslim extremists exist? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Mm.
And they mostly target other Muslims, by the way.
Oof.
Um, but the Muslim population is, I think, over 1.5 billion people.
That's wild.
Yeah, after Christianity is, at least on paper, it's around 2 billion. Islam's around, I think, 1.6 billion right now, something like
Wow.
that.
Wow.
And like I don't know the numbers. And if even like 1% of those people were super extremists, like that would be a, that would be a big problem. But sadly, what draws the attention and what creates the stereotypes and drives all the fear and all the media narratives, everything is it's that tiny, tiny fraction that are
Mm.
doing the stuff that hurts people and causes mayhem and creates the news and goes viral and so on. And that's why people, especially if someone has not traveled and has not like met lots of people from around the world and who are different,
Yes.
like I
Yes.
can I can totally understand why people have certain biases and
Uh-huh.
certain
Uh-huh.
prejudices, and these cut in all ways. I'm totally aware there are people who have like prejudices against like black men because they'll look at a certain stat and go, this percentage of this like is committing this much
Yeah.
crime. It's like, what person, like the average black man is not like is not a criminal, is not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we like them less than y'all do. It's just like, sadly, I don't know. It's
Yes.
something in the human brain
Yeah.
that
Well, and
like
also technology doesn't help.
finds the most extreme, and yeah, it
Because
magnifies it.
we're being fed narratives. Like I said,
Yeah,
that's, I mean, all I knew about Islam was really what I had been fed in movies, TV shows. I feel like there was a phase in the
yeah,
2000s where
yeah,
every single TV show it was like, it's a terrorist. And
yeah.
once again, to not go off onto the conspiratorial, it's like you wonder how much of that was on purpose, how much has been, architected, that's not the word, like just made to
Mm,
appear a certain way to get people ready for certain things and to drive our collective consciousness in a certain direction.
yeah.
But it's fascinating to me, and I feel like, here's the deal. Okay, I'm calling this my first season. I think I told you that. I've done podcasts before, but I was like, I'm stopping, I'm shooting these 10 episodes. My mom is trying to talk me into like just keep going. I might. If I do, I feel like we have to talk again, because I genuinely feel like we could just keep going for like a couple more hours. I have so many more like questions and thoughts.
Yeah.
But I do feel like, unless there was, which I'm going to ask you in a second, unless there's something else you want to say, which I will give you an opportunity if there's an end thought, I do feel like as a whole conversation, this is kind of a general good landing place, and kind of moral of the story of our conversation is this idea that like, what you see on the screen, things that are being fed to you, really what matters is your life, the habits that you do in your day-to-day life, your family, how you're treating your local community, not what bureaucrats in DC are telling you, what they're controlling, what the media is feeding you. And yeah, I just think that your experiences are fascinating. This has been fascinating to just hear from you. So on that note, I always ask everyone at the end, is there anything you would like to say that you came into this like, ooh, I really want to like touch on? If not, that's fine. But I really want to touch on this, or I want to say this in closing. I just want to like give the stage for you if there's anything else that we haven't, hit that you really want to hit.
Mm. Yeah, maybe I'll say two things. So just kind of landing the point that we were just making. I think it's important for people to remember, especially if you're someone who consumes a lot of media, whether that's on your smartphone and social media or that is through the TV screen. It's important to remember that normal doesn't go viral and normal doesn't make the news.
Ooh.
So if you are seeing something going viral or you're seeing something on the news, by definition, it's an anomaly.
Hmm.
So don't get so psyched out about and scared about either your own country or other ones or those people. Like, don't get, you could sit there on the internet and watch 10,000 scary horrifying videos that'll make you lose all faith in humanity.
Totally.
That does exist. Absolutely depraved and terrible things do happen every single day.
Yeah.
But a lot of extraordinarily good and positive things happen. But it's very uncommon for them to go viral or make the news. And
Yeah.
certainly just a normal day where everybody's nice to each other and is pleasant to each other, that's not news. That's not viral, but that's actually what's far more normal.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to remember that. And then I think the second is, just to drive home further the point you were making about focusing on the things that you do have control over, starting with yourself.
Yeah.
Starting with yourself and making sure that your own life is in decent order. It's never going to be in perfect order, but it's in decent order. Your relationships with your friends, with your family, with your kids if you have them, with your spouse if you have one, with God, ultimately. Like, if all of that stuff is straight and you do your best to maintain that and to achieve that, then regardless of what the world throws at you, regardless of what's going on with the economy or the stock market or the election cycle or the cult, like, you will be okay. So if you feel compelled to get involved, sometimes that's totally okay. But I would say, like, unless you literally work in politics and make a living from all of this stuff, which I don't think is that healthy to begin with.
I was just going to say, maybe avoid that career.
But someone's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we also want more good people to do it.
I know, right?
Also,
it's weird.
Yeah.
Kind of like Hollywood.
I would say then just kind of limit it. If you're walking around and you're feeling like anxious and scared and depressed and worried and outraged, if you're feeling that like all the time, you're probably just consuming too much of this stuff. And it's important to just kind of zoom back in, remember what's impact, like go outside, touch grass, get some sunlight,
exactly.
hang out with your friends, hang out with your family, and you'll quickly realize, you know what, like things are going to be okay.
Yes.
So that would be my last message.
Well, dude, this was just awesome. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to me. I feel like I'm about to just repeat all the same compliments I gave to you at the beginning. So maybe I'll restrain about your, thoughtful remarks and I just really appreciate it. And I would love to connect again in the future. And I don't know, that's pretty much it.